That's crazy. He's trying to get you home so you can get some sleep.
I appreciate that. I need some sleep after my day, so.
Okay, he likes to be.
Whenever you're ready, Nikki, please call the roll.
I will. All right, 7 p.m. All right, Nikki Austin is present. Jim Curran.
Present.
Mike Davis.
Present.
Mike Fraseth.
Here.
Nicole Josephs. Teresa Keen. Steve Mayer.
Present.
Terry Montgomery.
Present.
Phil, I don't see Phil, right? Nope.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
All right, seeing that we have a quorum, go ahead and call the July 14th regular Board of Education meeting to order. First item up is approval of our agenda for tonight. Look for motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike Davis, second by Terry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll go into our consent agenda. Give folks a minute to take a look. If there are any board members who wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please let us know. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Second.
That was Nicole, second by Nikki. I'll go ahead and read these before we vote. Item A, approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes from June 23rd, 2025. B, the approval of support staff resignation, Susan Langmeyer, Northside Educational Assistant. Approval of professional staff resignation, Jocelyn Lindstrand, Monroe Middle School Family and Consumer Education Teacher. Professional staff hire, Melanie Palombi, Parkside Special Education Teacher. And acceptance of a community donation from Monroe Noon Optimist Club for $1,000 for the Backpack Buddies program. Any discussion before we vote?
Just one question. I noticed on the hiring of Mulaney. Is that worrisome to anybody that she was the only applicant? Is that a trend we're seeing, or is that because of the timing?
Go ahead.
It's absolutely a trend we're seeing in the special education teacher pool right now. It's very, very limited.
Okay, it's really important to keep the people we have happy.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would add to that, even when we have positions that are posted in the spring, there's not a lot of candidates, and we just don't have a lot of people going into special education anymore. They're tough jobs, they're really important, and so we're really doing our best to grow our own when we can.
And we've also had several times people have been hired and then another district jumps in and hires them with a higher salary.
Ouch, that's painful.
So that's the game too, a little bit.
But good news is, with this hire, we are fully staffed. The only professional staff position that I believe that we don't have filled is the middle school family and consumer arts position, and we do have some applicants for that position, so we're feeling pretty good.
Other discussion? Mike. And big thank you to the Noon Optimist Club. That's a significant donation to the Backpack Buddies program. Okay. Let's, we got a motion and a second to approve the consent items. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, we've got public comment. Anybody in the house for public comment? Seeing none, I'll keep us moving. We got no old business. Moving on to new business. We've got a few items tonight. Another exciting set of announcements around our sponsorships for the new high school. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Monroe to take us through those announcements.
Sure. So, again, as Jim has said, and we've celebrated more than a couple times now, we're really fortunate to live and work in an incredibly generous community. We have a number of sponsorships that we're looking forward to celebrating over the course of this summer and hopefully into the fall. But what we're going to talk about tonight is Figge Insurance and Financial Services has very generously offered to sponsor our tennis courts at the new high school and the instrumental music room at our new high school. Both would be 10-year agreements for naming rights. The tennis courts would be paid for a total of $50,000, and the instrumental music room, a total of $10,000. Shane Figge could not be more enthusiastic about this partnership. Ron and I spent some time with Shane, talked about the vision for Monroe High School and what we're hoping to accomplish with the new facility. And Shane was extremely eager to be involved, and we're very thankful for the Figge family and Figge Insurance and Financial Services for their support. So we would recommend that the board approve these two sponsorship agreements, one for the tennis courts and one for the instrumental music room. Ron, anything to add?
No, I would agree. They were, Shane and his team were very excited. I know they were looking at not only programs that maybe some of Shane's family had been through, but some of the other people in the office who were committed to. So they kind of collectively selected the spaces that they wanted to support based upon things that were important to their staff. And so I thought that was pretty nice.
Thanks, Joe and Ron. Any questions for administration? Okay, we're gonna take these individually. So first I'll look for a motion to approve the sponsorship and naming rights of the new high school's tennis courts to Figge Insurance and Financial Services Incorporated for $50,000 over the course of 10 years.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike Davis, second by Terry. Any discussion? Just want to echo the immense gratitude that the administration shared here, and it's getting more real, you know, to envision what it's going to look like to walk up to an actual home tennis meet with all the teams and all the, you know, all the courts in one place and have a nice, beautiful sponsorship there for it. Really appreciate this.
And, yeah, and that complex is gonna look really nice. There's been a lot of work on the design, and it's gonna be amazing.
Can't wait. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, I will look for a motion to approve the sponsorship and naming rights of the new high school's instrumental music room to Figge Insurance and Financial Services Incorporated for $10,000 over the course of 10 years.
So moved.
Motion by Terry,
Second.
and a second by
I
Steve, I think.
I
Steve,
heard,
yep.
right? Yep.
Any discussion?
Joe, I know this is getting repetitive, but I think it's important that we, every time we go through this, restate the way these funds will be used.
Sure. Ron, I'll let you do that. You do a better job than I do in just talking about how we're using the funds and investing them for the future.
Yeah, and obviously we will track the large donations for large places individually for those specific areas, but otherwise, all the funds for the sponsorships are gonna be used to help offset future maintenance of the building. And so, you know, we have some long-term commitments for things such as the stadium, and we hope to have an announcement coming up on the gym in the near future. And those dollars for those areas will specifically be identified for those spaces. The others will be collectively held and used to help support all those spaces that we will have sponsorships for as we move forward. So it's all about we don't need the dollars now to finish off the school for the most part with all these. What we're looking at is being able to maintain the building going forward without having to come back to the community you know, if you think of like the PAC, we're open to find a sponsorship for the Performing Arts Center. You know, you get 10, 15 years down the road, you're looking at the lights, you're looking at the sound system, all those things to make sure that that space is a great space going forward, not only like it is the day it opens. And so that's how those dollars will be utilized. And so I'm excited that we're getting the support we're seeing, because I think it's going to help our community and our taxpayers long-term. And it's a great way to recognize some of these individuals and businesses that have long been supporters of the school district.
Thanks for asking, Mike. Appreciate that.
Discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, next up, we have an action item to approve the academic standards as presented. I'll turn over to Todd to fill us in.
This is a annual thing we do in July every year, improve the standards. Links are there, no major changes this last year. This is obviously the foundation of our work, of the knowledge and skills for each of those areas that we use to build our courses. Pretty straightforward.
Questions for administration? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the 25-26 academic standards as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Terry,
Second.
second by Nikki. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. And next up, we have an action item to approve the 25-26 building parent and student handbooks as presented. I believe I'm passing over to
Yeah.
administration to.
So, yeah, sorry, Jim. So as most of you are familiar with, annually, we take a look at our handbooks and we ask the board to approve them prior to issuing those to our families in the start of the school year. And we are in the middle of July and we are getting to that point where we're starting to feel like it's more like 25-26 and less like 24-25. So our principals and the staff have been working hard to make any necessary changes to the handbooks. If you had a chance to take a look at those, for the most part, they're minor adjustments, things that talk about communication and the implementation of our Parent Square communication system that's new this year. Some talk of using or how AI should or should not be used with students' assignments, some minor fee adjustments when necessary, and then at the secondary level, talking about some grading and assessment changes. So we have most of our principals here available to answer any questions that you might have, and we'd be happy to do so at this time.
I have a question regarding the cell phone electronic communication devices, because that covers, can't be used in a bathroom, in a locker room, only used in the classroom for educational purposes. Does this also cover smart glasses?
I don't know that anybody has seen smart glasses. Electronic communication devices would, but, we haven't encountered that yet, so we might have to add that specifically in there.
Okay,
Those becoming a thing again?
Yeah, for $300, I think it is
and
basically.
there's a camera on them.
Yeah.
So, obviously, same thing, cell phones,
Yeah.
But they can be used to also, you could take pictures of tests and pass it along.
Yeah, you can record video while you're sitting in class.
Probably a live stream, I think, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they easily identified? I haven't seen.
They're supposedly better. Initially, there was no notification when a person was recording. There is now a red light, but I don't know if it can be tampered with and shut off, but
The electrical tape probably could cover that
Yeah.
pretty easily.
I'm sure it's not hard.
Yeah.
Throw that in there as well. I mean, it would be under electronic communication devices, but.
I just remember seeing those, gosh, like 10 years ago maybe, and I didn't know that those were.
Yeah, they've revived that, and to your point, we haven't seen a lot of that. Nicole, I know you've talked previously about,
We had a patient
Yeah.
ask for us to fit them with lenses, and we said no, because they actually are a student. And we said, I don't know how that fits, and so we're not gonna do it.
like all technology, it's likely to impact us at some point, so we probably need to consider whether or not an update to the handbook is necessary and policy for that matter.
Staying ahead of AI, and if they can use those glasses to see, we can't see it, but they can, that's, try to stay ahead of it.
Good question.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, sorry.
One more thing to worry about, Josh.
We'll confiscate them and add them to our stack of other cell
Your
phones. that
collection.
Kids have given us that
Yeah.
aren't their actual cell phones.
Teresa, you had something?
I just, well, I was, finish that first. I was gonna say, for the grading and assessment piece, you struck all
all of the traditional grading and added kind of a blurb or a summary of what evidence-based grading is. I'm wondering if we should delineate which, like, for, you know, for some, over communication is better, right? Should we delineate what classes will be evidence-based grading and which won't? And should we still include, if they're not, this is what it will look like? I'm just curious, because I don't know, and
Yeah, we
Where you're
can, I mean, that's what we did in previous years, so we can certainly add it back in. I think we're at about 40% evidence-based grading classes now and 60% non. Regardless of whether it's evidence-based grading or traditional, we wanted emphasizing use
Agreed.
prices that we set in there, so.
I'm just wondering if
We
we should
didn't know how
delineate
deep in the
what.
weeds we wanted to get with how every point is derived. And that's the reason we took that out and more about this is how your experience will happen in the classroom. But we can certainly add it in if that's what we want.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. I
That's
think there
fair.
is, I think going to all those meetings, I think there is a desire for more communication on what that's gonna look like, right? So I don't know if this is the platform, the best platform to do it in. But I do think there's a desire for like better understanding of what that's gonna look like.
Yeah, which
Right.
one are you talking about? The evidence-based grading or the traditional? Traditional's been the same for
Right,
15
The
years.
evidence-based grading, for sure.
Okay, so that is what we're still, is a work in progress, right? I mean, you have the rubric there, which is a 4-3-2-1, missing and refusal. And then every single class will have their own proficiency scale. We can't put those all in
No,
one,
right, agreed.
related to the individual skills. And then the scale of how a grade is derived is in there.
But I'm just wondering if the courses, like which courses are,
Yeah, I think that's, I
should not,
think
should or not be.
on the website, I would like to have that
Okay.
spelled out of which courses are, and like Jeremy said, we're at about 40% evidence-based courses versus 60% not. And lay that out. A lot of them is freshman and sophomore, some junior, not as many higher level senior courses, none of them are AP, stuff like that.
Mostly core classes.
Yeah, mostly core.
We can do that.
And I don't know, I don't have a strong feeling that it needs to be in here versus on the website. I just think some
Yeah, I
place
think
for
there's
parents
stuff-
to be able to access or.
Guiding principles and practices, I think, are in here.
Mhm.
Leadership committee is working through changes now and still have some meetings left this summer. Obviously, there's a lot of work and thought that goes into some of this and preparation as they work through this. But I think it's a good idea to identify the classes, and I think communication will also be important in August if your child is in a class, and if they want more information, then we'll provide that overview as well. We have also talked about in the course overviews that we used to have, kind of the syllabus, what information goes in there and not in the handbook, because there are some specifics to classes and courses that need to be outlined there. And we really can't delineate and sort through in the handbook. So I agree, over communication is key. We want to make sure it's in multiple spots, so I think the website, certainly the handbook, and then in the course overviews that we're continuing to build.
Yeah, I was conflicted on not having too much in there, but we can certainly add back in the traditional grading. Nothing has really changed with that.
And there's a lot of information there, informative and summative, like examples and stuff like that, and then there's like, how do we handle late work,
And retakes.
homework, retakes, like some of that, like Jeremy said, we are starting to move, whether you're EBG or not, we're starting to apply those practices and principles to all courses.
But I think that's a good question, Teresa, because we still have classes that are being graded the other way still.
And I
We
saw,
will
I
for
saw
a
that
while.
grading scale was in there, right, I just know if there's a place for people to find that and to have access to that, wherever that is, I think that's fine.
It's easy to add that in.
So I do really like that you added the use of AI and our large language models. I'm wondering if, probably not for this one, right? But we should probably put a section in the future about appropriate use of AI. Because we're not gonna get away from students learning that, teachers teaching it, and I think we should set guidelines now for the future use of that.
That is another committee that we have, the AI committee. Just that one's a little bit more in the back burner than some of the others, so you're right.
Yeah, it's an emerging area in education, and
I think it's gonna be critical skills, especially for our students that are working with businesses in the community. They're going to be using those models as part of that educational experience.
right.
Going to college orientations, they talk about it, and don't really have a plan either, just that we know that you'll be using it, but know that that isn't learning, is what they say.
Yeah, and depending how you use it, right? And if I'm hearing you correctly, Mike, there probably is a role to use some of that technology, but let's make sure that we're coaching kids up on how to use it appropriately, because I think if, we won't do this, but if we did a show of hands of who's used it to help them through their work at some time, or I'll raise my hand, I'll help myself, right? And so I think, making sure that kids understand how to use it as an appropriate learning tool versus moving them into a territory that's maybe not desired is what we need to focus on, so.
What we don't want them is to present that work as their own.
Correct.
Just
Yeah.
For sure.
One other question, I see this is produced in, I'll say in English. Do we also have a Spanish version, any other languages, things like that? I know at one of the hearing sessions, that was one of the concerns that was expressed. So,
Yeah, I believe we do, but if we don't, we'll just double check and make sure we can have that.
yeah, if we should just make sure along with that and any other.
Yeah, all locations, right?
Other questions from the?
I do too. Go ahead. You go ahead. I just had a question about, on page 23, should the, 15 days be stricken and 10 days is in, which, red is what's new?
Are you looking at the high school?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the high school and it says 35, then 25, and 75 and 80%, and it's not, it's not striked out.
I
So
assume-
I'm wondering,
Which page is that? I'm
Page
sorry.
23.
23.
Yeah, so the red should be what will be, what we want for 25, 26, the black should be
The
stricken.
black should have a strike
Yep,
through it.
I'm sorry about
Okay,
that.
okay.
I will fix that right now.
Josh is looking to.
I just wanted to make sure and
Increases.
clarify.
Yeah, right, like
Yep.
Jeremy said, I mean,
Yep.
we want to increase our attendance expectations.
Yep.
And so we had this year, the senior graduation ceremony, like to participate in it, students had to meet a certain threshold every single trimester. And if they didn't meet one during one trimester, then they were ineligible. Well, I take that back, there's a threshold where you could miss a number of days, but you had to make them up in the main office. And if you were below that, then that option wasn't available to you.
Okay.
So we had an issue last year where a young woman made up a ton of time. She did it, but it just didn't seem like you're still out of the building a lot. And so we just don't want people to come in and, students to just come in and just make up hours and hours and hours. And
Is it beyond the regular excused attendance requirements?
Yeah, yeah.
That's where this kicks into place?
Correct, correct. Yeah, so just another way to kind of, we're preparing these kids for what's next. You gotta go to work. So you gotta come to school, and if you want to participate in the commencement ceremony, which we would love, it's a great thing. You gotta come to school.
Yeah, we don't want to keep anybody out of the commencement ceremony, but also it's a privilege, right? And we do want to make sure that kids are coming to school and kids are going to the classes, doing the work. And we felt like it was some students at the end taking advantage of that and being willing to sit in the office when their classes were done to make up time just on their phones or their computers. And we wanted to make that a higher bar so that you actually have to go to your classes.
So it's based upon attendance, but if they had really good grades, does that affect this? It doesn't matter.
They can still get their diploma.
Yep.
Just not walk.
They just can't walk. Okay, because, there's parents that take their kids out for vacation.
Yeah, we're not talking about that many. That 80% is
Okay,
a lot.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess this is for Todd and Jeremy and et cetera, but I'm looking at page 12 of the MHS handbook, and one of the concerns on evidence-based grading in the listening sessions was seeing that grades are getting posted more frequently. How's the kid doing in class so far? And that, I don't know how specifically where we've addressed that, but I think on page 12 under communication, in other words, are we addressing that?
Yeah, we didn't put it in the handbook. We typically don't, but it's begun.
For us, that's a talking point with our committee of, at what week of the trimester should we post grades, right? Kids should get feedback early, right? We should be looking at their evidence. But in terms of when a grade's submitted, Phil, like, I think that's still the discussion point in our committee of, is that week 4? Is that week 6? We feel like conferencing with kids, giving kids feedback, that one-to-one dialogue should be happening all the time. So there's multiple things we're trying to address and doing a better job of communicating clearly where kids are at in the learning.
Yeah, and I think as much as the kids, maybe the parents too, do they have access to that? When can they expect to be able to look and see how they're doing in class? I mean, I'm not saying it needs to be in the handbook,
Yep.
Kind of a hot point in listening sessions, and it seemed to me like it was maybe a layup, not a three-pointer, to kind of get that zeroed in, maybe before school starts, so that it can be communicated to the parents and the students.
I was just gonna say, we're aware of that too, and we would like to give more communication, more grades earlier. We also don't wanna give a false sense of skills when we're not quite there yet, right? So it's this different concept in this, right? Because we're working on skills as the trimester goes on, compared to the old system where maybe you turned in your syllabus signed by a parent or one worksheet and your grade populated as an A right away. We were good with that, but it didn't really indicate how good you were at the overall class. And we're trying to give an indication of how good you are proficiency-wise at all the overall skills in the class. So that's the difference really, primarily. We're trying to navigate through that is when is the time when we can say, yep, you're proficient, and we're pretty solid with that. Week 1 or 2 is hard to do that, but maybe we can give indications, that's what we're wrestling with, right? Give indications of, so far on everything that we've done, you're good, which is what the old system did.
Yeah, and I think that's what parents are maybe looking for, is my kid doing okay in class, in that class? And how you get there, I think, it's in your good hands, but I think maybe we don't want to lose track of that.
Appreciate that, Bill. I get some of these are questions about broader topics that we're using the handbook as one evidence point to gauge, are we addressing, are we hearing, are we turning things around? And so appreciate the discussion. Anybody else have questions on the handbook itself before we?
I'm just trying to check here. I noticed you have one red line on the high school one under the search and seizure policy. Is that page 55?
Shouldn't have anything there. What page is that?
Page 55?
I think it's changed to that. That would be you all. So-
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure we weren't making changes to the policy
If there is something
attachments.
there, we'll take that out.
Unless, I mean, if we need to make that grammatical change in the policy, we can do that, but it needs to match.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would have. I can take that out, yeah. Catch?
Bright red.
Yeah.
It's almost like you wanted us to see it.
Yeah. Good to clarify.
Right here, the official. And you said that shouldn't be in there, Jeremy, that,
I don't know why. Yeah. I can undo it though.
grammatically. that makes
I'll
sense.
actually make a note to check the actual policy to make sure it does.
Okay. So with that, I will look for a motion to approve the 25-26 parent-student handbooks as presented.
Are we doing them as presented, or are we making
The changes.
some
that
edits?
were-
Can the motion be as amended?
I'm good with that. Does that work?
Right, because you guys were gonna make some changes.
Yeah. Do you want us to bring it back to you guys at some point?
I don't think we need to, but we don't want to approve them as this.
No, that's good.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't even-
So I'll look for a motion to approve the 25-26 building parent-students handbooks as amended from our discussion today.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Nicole. Any discussion before we vote? I want to say thanks to all the principals for all the work on this. I know it's tedious work to keep up with all of it. Thanks for being open to the questions and feedback too. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. We get to set date for our annual meeting. Turn it over to Joe and Ron to give us a little background here.
Yeah, so the annual meeting is an important event that we hold annually. That's for the name. And there's a number of things that the board and the community work to determine during that meeting. It's very significant for our budget. I'll turn it over to Ron to just quickly talk about what it is that he usually accomplishes with the board and the community at that meeting.
Yes, that's the night when the community actually approves the budget and the levy that are presented in the paper to them in late September. It's the framework for the budget that we work off of the remainder of the year. We do come back prior to the end of October and make some final amendments to, once we get our final numbers on our revenue limit and our aid. And so I won't say that that's the final one, because we actually set the final levy after we get those final numbers in, which we don't have in advance of when we have to put it in the paper in advance of the annual meeting. So we have it later in the year so that it's much more timely and the information is much more accurate. Used to be the law said before revenue limits came into play that the last Monday in July was the annual meeting date. And there's still a handful of districts that still do it then. As you know, and we'll discuss here, you oftentimes have no idea what your budget's looking like. And so by having it in October, it allows our community to see a much better picture of what our budget will be. We also do approvals of such thing as, the ability to offer, a food service program and morning milk, and the ability to, offer textbooks and all those kind of systemic things that we do every year. But it's really about approving the budget and the setting the levy for the district.
So we have October 20th, Monday, October 20th as the recommended date. One thing for the board to consider that's written in the motion, and happy to have this changed. One suggestion was that we could potentially hold it at the Monroe High School Performing Arts Center. Given the conversation that's going to be happening not only later today, but in future meetings, we may or may not be considering a referendum, which may result in more people having an interest in attending that meeting. I'll just say for me, I've had a sensitivity to when we have meetings where we anticipate that there could be a lot of community members here not having enough space, potentially having to move. Happy to have it here, but I also think if there's a thought that we may have a good number of community members that are going to be in attendance, that we plan for that ahead of time and we make it comfortable and accessible.
Joe, do you have the PAC schedule already to know that there's not going to be something going on that day?
I do not. Jeremy, do you have access to that right now? That's a great question, Mike.
What was the date again? I'm sorry.
On Monday, October 20th.
Same problem as always, NHS induction ceremony.
Oh, it is.
Oh,
All right,
7 to
that's
9
right.
at night.
So
That
then,
happened last time, too. I think that is what we did last year, if I remember
is
right. I
what we
think we
did.
said we were gonna be here,
Be
and if it was
here
full,
and have that
and that's how
as
we
a
posted it,
backup.
and we would walk over to the middle school.
Right.
That is what we did.
what's that,
And we
Jeremy?
made it to NHS in time, yep.
And last year,
we
the
stayed
numbers
here.
weren't a problem.
And then we ended up being able to
Right.
stay
But we
here. So
posted
I'd
together, and I
recommend that
think
we
it
do
Doing
that,
it
because we
just the same.
posted it. Yep. That we would just walk over there. So I would say
That's a
that.
good call.
Yeah, we used to approve this date at the annual meeting. And a few years ago, we actually had switched at one time to the, and that might have been right before COVID happened. We switched it to right before, with the first meeting in October for the board meeting. And what we learned is it just becomes too problematic to actually then execute and have an actual board meeting.
Sure.
And so we've kept it as, what gets approved at the annual meeting is that the board has the opportunity to set the date, which is great. It gives us that kind of flexibility, but, we've found that the traditional, which it always used to be, the third Monday in October works best. Because otherwise it really conflicts with a board meeting.
Ron, you'll have all the state aid.
No, yeah, we won't. The state aid, well, I will have it, but we won't be able to act on it because I'll get it on October 15th. However, we act on what is posted in the paper. And so what gets posted in the paper has to go out far enough in advance of the 15th that I don't have it by the time I put it in the paper. So what we'll do is much like we have other years, we'll have what is in the budget. This year I'll be early enough, I'll have the actual numbers. Last year I got them literally on the day of the annual meeting. And I can tell people what the board will be approving the following week, but they'll actually be acting on what is in the paper.
I feel like it was 5.
It was, yeah, it was a 5 o'clock meeting.
So I'll put a placeholder in there.
I'm trying to look back, but.
All right, so if I'm hearing us correctly, we're looking to,
Oh, we said, I'm sorry, we said it,
do we
Was
need
it?
to set the
'Cause-
time right now?
because this said
We need
7.
to set the time
This
in the
says
day.
7 in the notes.
Yeah, but we never did it at 7 because we got to
So we must
NHS.
have
We did it
amended
at 5.
it.
I'm
Yeah,
sure we did
okay.
it at 5.
Perfect.
Then we were able to get to
So then we
NHS.
changed it from what this was. then.
Yeah, so last year we didn't do it at 7 for sure. I would say, yeah, 5.
Perfect.
All right, any other questions for administration on this?
7.
We're debating the
I
time
don't-
down in our
I didn't
end.
see
I
that.
think we listed it at that time, but it was 5 o'clock. I know I looked at that.
Yeah, I know this too.
Okay, so I'm gonna,
Would it
let me make sure I've got this correct. So we are looking at,
Just clarifies the location.
to be held at the Bauer Education Center with Monroe Middle School Auditorium as an alternative site. And this is Monday,
October 20th.
October 20th at 5 PM.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna look for a motion to approve the annual meeting date for Monday, October 20th at 5 PM to be held at the Bauer Education Center with Monroe Middle School Auditorium as an alternative site if necessary.
So moved.
Got motion by Mike,
Second by Nikki.
second by
Nicole, sorry.
Nicole. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, on to curriculum update. Toss it over to Mr. Parity.
Yeah, I got a few things. It's been a busy June, half of July. Summer school just wrapped up. 4 weeks of that. Wrapped up last week. We had 937 students take at least one class. That's really good numbers. I think when I reported maybe April, May after registration, we were in the 800 range, and typically 900 to 1,000 is where we've been. So we talked about transportation, not providing that, or it being limited. Families certainly, and kudos to families in finding a way to get kids there every day. Didn't seem to have a big impact on our overall numbers as it compared to the last few years for sure. So big thank you to all the staff that commit to work. It's a tough school year and then they sign on for 4 more weeks, which is a big deal. We provide a lot of different opportunities that are great for kids, including breakfast and lunch every day. So it's a great program.
thankful for Laura up at DAC and all the work that she does in the preparation. And then we have a couple teachers do principalship during the 4 weeks, and they do a great job of help managing the day-to-day work. So overall, really good. Second on my list is we've done a lot of work in June with our 612 staff with evidence-based, I'm gonna say teaching and learning. We use grading. It's a lot more than grading, obviously. It's curriculum updates, it's assessments, it's pacing, it's all of that. We had 75 staff attend workshop sessions in June, up to 6 hours of work where they were in this space, working together as a team. Again, just doing the work and preparing for next fall. And then my last thing in the list is we had Eric Larson. Some of you know Eric. He came and reported to the board last October. He is a data guru at the state level. He works for CISA. This is the second year working with Eric. And he does a great job of providing a breakdown of all the data, forward, ACT, pre-ACT, and really helps us identify things that I think for us would be hard to identify because he knows a lot more about all those metrics and how everything works. So he met with each building leadership team and identified celebrations and then some things that we can work on to address in our action plan for this upcoming school year. So spent 2 days with him. He'll be back with us in October again to meet with all of you once we get report card information to break that down and give an overview. But Eric's great, well worth the time that we have with him and helping support the work that we're doing.
A lot of early indications that suggest we have a lot to be proud of and celebrate.
A lot of celebrations, and then he always finds a few things for us that are things that we should target and work on, and some of them we're aware of, and sometimes we're surprised, and that's good. We want to know that information.
Glad to hear the summer school numbers were up, even though we cut the rural buses. That's great news.
Yeah, really good.
Do you have that breakdown? Do we know, were they up in the city and down in the country? Were they up across the board? Were they?
For summer school?
Yeah.
I don't have exactly how that breakdown plays out between in town and out of town. I just know the numbers are very comparable. We had 900 and some last year attend, so we're pretty close. I look back to 2021, which we were coming off of COVID and that did some things differently. We had only 657 students attend, so we've slowly been building that back. But I'd say the last 2 or 3 years, Mike, we're in the 900 to 1,000 range, so pretty comparable. And we'd have to do a real deep dive to identify which kids didn't sign up, and that might be hard to determine what the variables were there, if it was transportation or what. But I just know the overall numbers are a good comp.
Good question. Going back to the Eric Larson and data piece, I think the board is aware that on August 4th, we have a data retreat scheduled with the board. The timing of this is great because it allowed us to spend a couple days with Eric, really dig into what's going on. We had a meeting this morning talking about the timing and making sure we get everything ready. And it's our hope to have everything lined up so that we can have data that we share with the board, be prepared to answer questions from you all, and make sure you feel good about the direction we're going in. And frankly, we're pretty excited and proud of the work and looking forward to that. We are planning, and hopefully the two of you got an invite. It's our hope to sit down with Jim and Teresa to get some early indication of what it is that you all hope to see from us, because we want to make sure that that we use the time wisely. So we'll do that, and certainly if there's any information that you hope to hear from us, certainly you can work through Jim, and Jim and Teresa will get us that information. We'll be sure to have it, but looking forward to that conversation. That's really meaningful. I just want to say on behalf of the team, in the past, there's been a little bit of confusion about some of that work, but please know that whenever we have an opportunity to sit down with the board and talk about the work and share our results, both good, and there's a lot of good, and the areas that we need to target to improve, we look forward to those conversations. So that'll be a fun day.
What are the hours of the data retreat? Was it meant to hold the whole day?
No, I think is it 5 guys? What did we have on that?
5 to 9 is.
Yes, Nikki. whole day data sheet.
And I'm like, whoa, so I put myself out at work.
Oh, you did?
I did, because I'm like, okay, maybe we changed something. I didn't know, but I wasn't gonna miss it.
Yeah, I have 5 to 8 on my calendar, but if we go 3 hours, I'd be surprised, depending on how many questions you all have. Well, obviously, we'll get an official invite and post out there, but tentatively plan on 5 to 8.
Yeah, it says all day in my calendar, literally, so I'm like, okay, great.
We're gonna learn a lot
We
today.
like data as much as
I know you like that, but I'm like.
the rest of them, but that might wear everyone out, so we wouldn't do that to you.
Oh, thank you.
So, but again, looking forward to that opportunity. I think it's gonna be a great evening, not day. 2 hours.
Thanks. Todd and Joe, any other questions for administration? Okay, let's move on to our Monroe High School building project update.
Yeah, so we've got a few things that we want to talk about, and Heather's queuing up the slides, but we're not going to give that to you right away. We're going to treat that kind of the dessert after the dinner, because that's really exciting. I saw Teresa was looking at it over here. I think what we want to do is talk about a couple things before we get to the branding and signage. Is talk a little bit about just where we're at with the general construction update, things that are going on. I want to talk to you a little bit about a time-sensitive issue relative to synthetic turf on varsity softball and baseball fields, and whether or not that's something that we'll consider doing. And then we can get to the branding and signage, which is really giving you a visual of what the building may look like based on the early work. So, Ron, do you want to start by just talking about where we're at with the construction at this point?
Yeah, I'll just give an overview, but I did share the two latest updates, one from Russ, who is with PRA Architect, who comes out and participates in all the on-site construction meetings and does his inspections and walkthroughs of the building. And so they have a whole team that works originally on the design, and then any changes in design that are coming. They have 2 people who are just dedicated to answering questions about final clarifications for all those subcontractors as they come up, and then Russ is really kind of that liaison person, their boots on the ground here, but also a communicator back with those folks, even though in the world of online virtual meetings, most of all of them are in those meetings as well virtually, but it's nice to have an actual person. There's also an update there from Joelle with CG Schmidt, and Joelle does a lot of the details and tracking of individual parts of the project, as far as, he has an engineering background, but he's, new to the company, and so he does a lot of the go-between between the subs and the architects and tracking down any questions that are there and getting them answered. And so he also does the minutes and also gives updates as to how the project looks. So there's a lot of pictures there for you. In a nutshell, the kind of the main academic wing on the west end of the building, they're inside working on drywall. In some areas, they're even working on taping the drywall. The roof obviously is on those sections of the building. The roof is now covered like through the kind of the back of house food service and working its way over. And now they're actually onto the field house as well. And so we're hoping to have that done here in the next week or two. And then once that's done, they're gonna move to the clear story for the commons, and then they'll move from that to the north and finish up over the PAC, music, science, library, ag areas. And so making great progress, and obviously as they get areas buttoned up, they're flooding all the subs in there. So I mean, whether it be, you think of all your mechanical subs, but you also have your drywallers, your windows, your door people, they're all flooding in there as the opportunity allows. So we're moving really good. If you saw some of the pictures in there on the landscaping side, the big retaining wall that kind of separates our baseball, softball area from the wetlands that were out there has been completed. That's pretty impressive. And then They're actually starting in some areas with the islands, doing the grass and trees. And so that's pretty exciting to see as well. And still on budget, on schedule, and so that's always great news. The weather, has for the most part cooperated with us. A few of these last storms certainly give them some pause, but nothing that puts us off schedule. It's just working around it, and we'd like to get that roof on everywhere, as before these big storms keep hitting. So that's our hope and our goal. So.
Any questions for Ron relative to that before we move on to the next topic?
Ron, what was the digging that they're doing down in like the northeast corner? I noticed they were doing some excavation down.
Oh, there's another pond over on that side. So much like there's the ponds to the south of the building that were done way back at the first thing that was done, and they've been there ever since. There's a pond up there on the northeast end too, so it kind of, our water goes into that and then settles slowly out into the land below us, right? Because
It wasn't the lift station.
no, although
You really like the
I will-
lift station on this side of the highway.
I was really hoping.
See, that's a great question, though. CG Schmidt did have a meeting with both, the BNS development team as well as, and actually it's more of the carousel, folks who are doing the work for them, as well as with the city's, contractor who's working on the street project. And so they got a better sense of how that coordination is going. Their bids are out for, actually it's been approved for the streets for the city. And so that work is gonna be commencing soon. BNS has, some of the specs and stuff put out for some of their work, and they're actually hoping, that they may be ready to have a lift station in as soon as December is the optimistic look. Obviously, we know there's always some DNR permitting and things that, can sometimes delay that. It's just a question of how fast those permits come through. But that's what they're hoping and shooting for, and they've been great as far as trying to work as fast as they can with all the, the city approvals and then the state approvals and things that have to happen. One thing, not to switch subjects, but I also wanted to share, was obviously internally, when I talk about them doing some drywalling and stuff, in the areas of the building where they're looking at, NAMI has, fired up some of in some cases, our air handling units, not the full systems, but to get some of the humidity out. So we are controlling humidity in the building. We have external cooling coming in. We haven't fired up our own AC. And so we're trying to keep the humidity down as we do that work. So just so you know, we're not in the heat and humidity and dampness, working on drywalling.
10 units they brought in, we're not using our,
Not yet. We will be. We're looking to hopefully have ours fired up before we get into the winter. And so right now it's, we're moving some of the air, but it's mainly all temp that's coming in as far as providing the actual cooling. It's not our AC units.
make sure they're doing, like, one point of conversation with them is to make sure they're protecting those, because all the work and the dust of construction can sometimes cause problems with the units long-term then.
Yeah, I lived through that. This will be my third time living through that, yeah. So usually they double filter them, do some screening off, and then usually there's a commitment that the warranty doesn't start till our actual occupancy, not when they fire it up for us to start using it for construction. And there's also, in my one project, we required duct cleaning. That was back when we were doing more concrete construction. I don't think we'll need that this time. But yeah, there's that whole, all new filters, duct cleaning, all those things to make sure they're in place. And so we've had some of those conversations already. So, but I appreciate that heads up. Because if you haven't lived it, it's a big thing.
Yeah, it stinks. I think maybe it was the last meeting or some previous meeting, we talked about they are going to incorporate an arch of some sort somewhere. Is that moving the existing one, or is that creating a new element?
That is creating a new arch. The current arch is staying with the building. It's technically part of the architecture and
Holding up to the front entrance, right?
secured to the building, and so we won't be moving that, but we will have something very similar, represented, on the, well, it would be towards that northeast end, by the football, soccer track stadium, going over a walkway, and we think the way it's set up will look quite nice. There's also another representation of the arch that we'll get to at the end, or when we get into some of the branding and signage discussion that we'll show you.
Okay, perfect. So that, what I heard you say is that's a structural element of the existing building, so that's not something that can be moved.
Nope, you and I won't be out there with crowbars and saws taking that thing apart, that's staying there, but we've heard from the community loud and clear that they want the new high school to have an arch, have it represented, and we're excited to tell you that we think it's gonna be beautiful and it'll be there.
Great. Thanks.
Other questions?
That was it on the update, and then, I don't know if you wanna jump to turf then, or?
Sure.
But let me just,
Yeah,
one quick, this is probably obvious to everyone else, but one quick note of gratitude. I think it just kind of struck me how much of your time, Ron, is being devoted to this project, and just how lucky we are to have you with all of your experience and skill and wisdom as kind of the lead on the project for the district. So I just want to say a big thank you to, you're on all these meetings, you're answering every very detailed question about the project, and you've got a whole another set of responsibilities for your core job. So just want to say thanks for all the work you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, but I really do, I mean, I think the board did a great job of, and I know Mike was on those interviews too. We obviously, we had an original selection of, there's very, you can do a design build, but it's sometimes nice to have a general and a contractor, so you kind of have two sets of professionals there already. Sometimes with that push and pull, as we were working through to come up with some of the efficiencies needed to make our budget, it's nice to be able to have two companies giving you an opinion versus just one, and you're sitting there wondering what is being said. But then, we heard from the community, and the board followed through with getting our owner's rep, and so we have that level of professionals too. And then, it's not just me. Jeremy's put countless time into meetings with that building. Joe, since he's jumped on board, Rich Sentner, like the day-to-day small questions, they're on his phone all the time, texting or calling him. And so there's a lot of people who are invested in this, because obviously we want this to be, a great success for our district and our community. And so I appreciate it, but I'm just one of the cogs in this. And so there's a lot of people that are committed, and I get excited when I hear the passion that the professionals who are working on this building have for it. And I get excited when I hear, one group of professionals or two groups of professionals talking very complimentary about the professionals from the other entity that are working on it. So when you have, your Huffman Keel team and your PRA team saying, the guys who are running this for CG Schmidt's are an all-star team, that tells me a lot. CG Schmidt can tell me that, and I somewhat, believe them, but when the other professionals say these are really great people who are in charge of your project, and then at the same time, when you have CG Schmidt saying, we really enjoy working with these folks, because some of these, PRA and CG Schmidt have worked together, but, Huffman Keel hasn't worked with, these, they worked on a lot of projects, but not directly with some of these teams. And so when you have people telling you that and experiencing that, that they're being genuine with you. And so we have a good team working for us.
No, and I'll just say thank you for recognizing Ron. I think my lucky stars that we have him to facilitate this project, because I do not have all the experience that Ron does and Mike does and others. And so there are a number of times when there's some things going back and forth, and I have to immediately look at Ron and say, Ron, what's our answer? Because frankly, we don't know. So we are very fortunate to have Ron and his experience. So let's talk about turf for the softball and baseball varsity fields. This is something, to be clear, that was not built into the budget originally. This is something that has been brought forward by some individuals from the community, people that are associated with the baseball and softball programs that are very interested in seeing synthetic turf being on the infield portion of the varsity softball and baseball fields. In short, the rationale is that if you're playing softball and baseball in April and May in Wisconsin, it's really wet and drainage is an issue, and there are a number of games that are often postponed and or canceled as a result of the weather. And so they truly believe that it's in our best interest to provide a synthetic infield to give kids the greatest opportunity to play their games and play their games in Monroe so that they don't have to be rescheduled or moved to some schools where they do have turf fields and they can accommodate despite the weather. I think as Ron and Jeremy and I have all been pretty consistent in our response, we hear you loud and clear. We support your desire to have the turf, but we're not going to compromise this project by promising that we're going to make a purchase that was not originally budgeted. That's just not something that we're comfortable with, and certainly I've heard loud and clear from the board that we've got a budget, we need to stick to the budget, and that's what we're honoring. But through the process of the naming and sponsorship work and also working with some of those community members that are very interested in turf, we have had some discussions in the community about whether or not there be businesses that potentially would be interested in sponsoring the turf for those fields. At this point, we have some indication that that may be the case. We don't have anything signed, and part of the reason we're having this conversation tonight is to take the temperature of the board relative to this idea that if we were able to secure the funds from some donors, would we be interested in investing in synthetic turf for the varsity softball and baseball fields? Again, we don't have anything nailed down yet. We have a strong indication that there's support for the softball field, and we had a very serious conversation relative to the baseball field as well. But this is a time-sensitive issue. They're actively working on our athletic fields. There's a lot of design and planning that goes into it. There's specific drainage work that needs to happen in order to put a synthetic turf infield on those fields. And so, after trying to get a sense of where this was going and working on this for a number of months, we felt it was necessary to have some discussion at the board level to get some feedback and direction from the board. So, Ron, what did I miss relative to that?
Two things I guess I'll point out. One is, going back to Mike's question earlier tonight, this would be different than how we're treating all the other spaces, right? So the other spaces, the sponsorship dollars are going to set aside to help with the long-term maintenance. In this case, turf was not planned for those fields, so this would be looking at, are we willing to use some of that upfront money to fund the turf? And then two questions is how much sponsorship are we getting, or if we have some commitments, even if they have a 2-3 year payback, are we willing, to do that versus if we need to have it all up front and in hand? I think the other issue is, that the people who are proponents for this would say is they know that we're looking and hoping that at some point we will have, maybe even if we have dollars at the end of the project, lights on those fields. And so they're looking at it only being on the varsity fields. That way, if the infields of the JV fields are not, playable and we have lights, we can stack the games on the varsity fields and still get both the JV and a varsity game in a night, which is what they do in some of the other districts that do have turf fields. So they're not looking at going turf on all 4 diamonds. It would just be on the 2 varsity diamonds.
Was lighting in the original plan?
Lighting is not. We put in the infrastructure for the lighting, so all the duct work or all the conduit is there going to all of them. Anywhere where the bases were going to be interfering with asphalt or concrete work, we put the bases in place so that we're not cutting through brand new blacktop or concrete. And so that is there. It's one of those areas where when Ryan talks about, there's our uncommitted dollars, which we now committed some of those dollars to furniture. there's our owner contingency, and then there's project contingency. That's one of those options that the board will have at the end, is saying, okay, we have some of those contingency dollars. What do we want to consider to finish out this project? And that would be one of the things that we could consider. So we have those pricings available.
So we're talking strictly about the turf though, not lighting tonight? Okay,
Correct.
okay.
And turf installation, not long-term upkeep.
That's the question that we're having is,
Okay.
are you, because if we're not willing to do that, then there's no turf in the project, and then we just move forward without turf.
Gotcha.
But what is the maintenance involved with turf? Like if we use the dollars that are committed for installation, what does that look like from a maintenance standpoint 10 years from now or 5 years from now? I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so it does have a replacement, much like the football field does as well. Typically they're telling you it's 12 to 15 years. Many districts are getting 15 years or longer. What we're hearing is because of the usage, quite honestly, when you're talking the football field, like in our case, you're talking PE classes, football, soccer, all getting on them. Those are more likely on the baseball side. They're typically getting longer out of their turf than even the high school or even the football ones. You still have to rake it and do all those things like you do with the other turf. It's not as high of a turf usually on the infields as it is on the football. But I haven't, seen what turf they're looking at. But you still have to rake the little pellets and do all those things. And so there is your typical maintenance. Obviously, there's not as much striping of the field. There's not as much mowing or maintaining of the infield. So there is some labor savings over the course of it, over the life of it for, having people out there on a wet day, raking it and trying to dry it and then getting it, striped and ready to go, so.
Do you have any idea what lights would cost?
Yeah, I believe we shared that out at one point in time, and give me a second or two, I can find that for you.
Well, you're looking for that, just a clarifying question. So is what you're asking or why we're having this discussion, you're looking at potentially someone's interested in the naming rights for the varsity fields, but instead of setting those funds from the naming rights aside for maintenance of those fields long-term, those funds would be used upfront for turf. So the district then would be responsible for planning that maintenance. Is that?
That's absolutely correct.
I think that's step one, and step two is those people would be paying over 3 or 5 or 10 years, but we would have to come up with it upfront. Is
The
that
initial, yeah,
accurate?
the
We'd
purchase,
have to
correct,
commit to
yeah.
the funds to get it done, if they're paying over a 10-year period.
So, and again, to be clear, this isn't listed as an action item. We're not taking a vote. This is more, again, just trying to,
Thumbs up to no overbuilding.
yep, just getting a sense of what the board's comfortable with, because as we've said a couple times, this was not part of the original plan. We're trying to be responsive to the community and the people that are very passionate about softball and baseball. And I just would say, I understand why. I appreciate the amount of time and effort they put into this. They're good people. They truly care about our kids and their experiences. But this is different. This is different from our original plan. This is different from how we're treating the other sponsorship agreements. And as such, we wanted to make sure that we're providing an opportunity to speak publicly about the thinking related to this work if we're gonna move forward. Because if we truly do have some businesses that are interested in sponsoring this project, we'd hate to enter into some of those agreements and then come back to the board and have you all say, no way. I want to get a sense of where we're at.
Quick question, Ron. What is the price difference between turf versus grass?
Well, grass is what's spec'd in there right now. And
Right,
so, if we
I mean,
wanted
it's
to
not
switch,
free.
if we wanted to switch to turf, it's $400,000 for the two varsity infields.
Together, so it's
Yeah,
200 each.
Together, yeah.
it might not be 200 each because baseball would be bigger than softball, but I only have a combined number for
Sure,
that.
okay. And there's different donors for each side, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's infield only.
Yep.
but it does cover, I'll say, the dirt part of the infield back to the grass of the outfield. That's the way I've seen it. I know like Sun Prairie West has that. I think it's awesome for that part. The girls softball up there has total turf. If we decide to go that way, I would vote against it. I don't think we need total turf.
Yeah,
If we need any.
There are some that do it all the way to the outfield fence,
Right,
right?
we don't need that. I don't think.
But yeah, no one
I just wanna make
suggested
sure
that.
that was it, and, okay.
Bill also asked the question on lighting, and again, that would be more toward the end of the project where we would probably look at that. Turf, it's one of those where, as Joe said, we obviously have drainage that's underneath the outfield. We have drainage even if we have a standard infield, we're underneath it, but there's curbing and different drainage that goes underneath a turf field, so there is a time sensitivity nature of the install. Because there are districts where they went natural and then 2 years later they tore it out and put turf, so it's better to at least have the conversation up front. Phil's question on the lighting, basically it's $340 to $350 per baseball field and about $175 per softball field, so about $1,050,000 for all four.
So lighting's a lot more than the turf.
Well, but that's for all four. You wouldn't have to do all four.
Oh, okay.
You could do-
just the two
you could do,
varsity.
yep,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
When you were talking longevity of the turf, since the option to only do the varsity fields is there, when the community uses the diamonds, are they using then the grass ones or are they using the turf ones?
I'm sure their first request would probably be for the turf ones.
Right. I didn't know if that was,
There'd be a rental fee, correct? You had like a rental fee?
Depends who it is and how it is. If it's someone we have a reciprocal agreement with, then perhaps not.
Sure, sure, sure.
I think the idea is with a four-field complex there to potentially host more tournaments, and use all of the fields. I think there's people that are really excited about that. And frankly, from a community standpoint, I think, many of us would agree that, the community has made a major investment in this building, in that campus. And we'd like to be able to use it for that purpose and allow a lot of people to come in and not only enjoy the facilities, but also bring folks into Monroe so they can eat at our restaurants and stay at our hotels and do all the great things that enjoy Monroe, because it's a special community.
I have one more question. If these sponsors are, sponsoring to put the turf in, is it possible that once, they've paid for that a second donor can come along and be like also a secondary 10-year sponsor to cover upkeep towards the next, like we're doing with the other ones?
I'm not sure how
I
that.
think it depends on how we structure the agreements, right, Ron?
But yeah,
I
if they
mean,
could
if-
share it or
If we're looking at lifetime sponsorships or lifetime naming rights for the fields, then we would have to be careful about that.
I think, and there is a spot for somebody who wants to do the whole complex, but I think, Joe's right. I think if somebody were to do the upfront lifetime naming of a field, then it probably becomes problematic to, now, we have the JV fields, certainly, and the upkeep on them isn't as much, so if somebody then wanted to sponsor those, then those dollars could certainly be allocated toward helping to maintain the varsity fields, right?
So the donors for the turf are a lifetime?
We don't have that in place at the moment. so.
Okay.
We don't have that in place, but the numbers that are associated with that project in order to cover the costs are at the level of a lifetime.
You would need a lifetime commitment for each, at 200 each, to be able to have the 400,000 to do the turf.
Could you do the lifetime and just, well, it's a big ask, but double it? To get around the coming back later and whatever, naming,
Yeah, because-
10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you need somebody else to come partner and you can't give them the recognition because you did a lifetime with the first one.
Unless it's too old or, I don't know.
I'll say this, and Ron, you can jump in and tell me, I would say, we've initiated conversations and we provided a number. I'd be hesitant to go back and say, guess what, the price tag just doubled. I think the people that are involved in the conversation are very supportive and, are interested in working with us. I think regardless of, say, if we ask 400,000 per field, there's still going to, at some point, there's gonna be a need for the district to step in and maintain that life cycle of the field. So whether it's 15, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, there's a commitment that goes with.
We will have mitigated a lot of it, but we're not gonna mitigate all of it.
Right.
So, and I think, you know, going back to when we first developed our sponsorship booklet, I mean, you know, things were tiered and priced according to, you know, some of the cachet that was with them. And so, that's been out there for a while now. And so I would have a tough time going back to whether it's these individuals or individuals who've already previously committed to something else and going, okay, we moved the bar.
Right. I mean, my struggle is, you know, if we get somebody to sponsor to cover most or all of the installation costs, that's fine, but, you know, lights are gonna be a lot of money. And that's gonna have to come out of owner contingency, right? So I'm, you know, a little nervous about 15 years from now.
Sure.
And, you know, now 400 is 500 with inflation, whatever, you know. So what I'm nervous about is doing lights, doing the turf if it's sponsored
And not
and covers the
having the light.
installation costs. And then we do lights out of owner contingency. It's a lot of money, wasn't it?
And it's not necessarily that you do both. So you could do one or the other. We've had those conversations as well. You could do turf and not lights, or lights and not turf. The folks that we've talked to that are close to the program have suggested that they feel turf is a greater priority just due to inclement weather and trying to get games in.
I mean, how important is lights relative to, you know, early in the season schedule, game schedules? I mean, right now softball's declining, right? There's lights there. I mean, what,
Some of it gets around to how many fields are playable, right? I mean, there's nights right now where we, you know, don't do the junior high game, right? We can get the varsity field ready because we've got a little better drainage and stuff on that. And, you know, then we just play a couple innings of JV ball or whatever, right? And so, and again, I think, you know, the people who are passionate will say, yep, I think their first priority is turf. I think they also know that it's, if you don't get it up front, it's probably harder or more expensive to do. I mean, like I say, I know districts who've done it, but it's tough to convince your community, you know, 2, 5, whatever years later that you're gonna tear out a new baseball field and put in a turf one, right?
I mean,
Where they, I think, know that you can put up lights pretty much whenever, right? And so whether it's a different fundraising tact or whatever, you can do that down the road more easily.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I feel really great about, you know, community partners that are interested in helping us out with the turf and the installation, don't get me wrong, but, you know, I'm kind of thinking 10, 15 years from now, and if we use owner contingency because of wishes, because we'll have to make that decision at some point, you know, do we put lights in or not, and, yeah.
I actually really like what Ron just said, right? Like you have to make a decision about turf now. This is timely. Lights could really come in 5 years, you know, that could come in whenever funding is available for lights, as long as it's set up.
Joey, kind of wanted to gauge the temperature. I'll come right out and say I'd be unlikely to support it.
Okay.
I understand the sentiment. I understand the need. I would love it too. But given the discussion we're gonna have later today and the financial situation the district is in, we need the funds set aside to maintain things. And if we don't have that, especially for that big a ticket item, I worry about the long-term sustainability and affordability for the district.
I also agree with Mike. I would love to put the turf in, for sure. I don't think the structure is gonna work. I feel like we could make it work, but something's not right with this structure and not having the long-term commitment is my concern. I am so pumped that the community wants to help with the turf and I want to put it in. But without having that piece of how are we maintaining, how are we planning for the future, we need something else in there.
Did the sponsors talk at all about being willing to pay for the lighting instead of the turf if the board decided they didn't want to go with the turf? Because having the lighting, you can play night games and longer games and have more there. I mean, and hopefully the fields drain well because this is brand new construction. It's not like at Twining where it sits down low and the water sits there in pools. So I'm just kind of wondering, I'm sure they came to you and said, hey, we're interested in putting in the turf, right?
It didn't exactly play out that way. We initiated some of the conversations
Okay.
and had help through the community facilitating those conversations. We haven't had direct conversations about funding the lighting or sponsoring the lighting rather than the turf. For all the reasons we've talked about relative to it being time sensitive, that's really been our focus to this point. Certainly depending on what we get in terms of feedback from the board, we may need to pivot and we can have additional conversations. I think Ron and I are very comfortable with that. But ultimately, we want to get a sense of where you all are at.
Yeah,
And with
you
that-
would certainly circle back and say, are you still interested in
And
sponsoring?
sponsoring the
Yep.
fields, because I would love to have turf. I'm a softball person, would love to have it, but I'm conflicted as well.
Sure.
Same argument here about the lights too, though. I mean, to me, we need to set up the maintenance fund, not use those funds for a capital investment.
Same from the owner contingency.
No, I'm saying
if they were to-
the funds from a sponsorship and naming, something like that, unless someone's gonna step up and say, yeah, we're doing the naming, but yeah, we'll sponsor the turf also, right? I mean,
Ron, are these two fields that are, you know, in conversation for artificial turf infields, are they foreign soil, or is that all earth that's been moved?
It's all earth that's been moved. I mean, most of it's started on our site. Obviously, we've had to move, soils around depending upon what kind of soils they are and how they're used. But yeah, none of it is the soil that was originally laying right there. They excavated it down entirely and they're building it back up. And Terry is right, whether it be the outfields right now have an extensive drainage underneath it. It's two different drainage systems, whether it's turf or natural infield, but there's gonna be drainage under the infields as well, right? And so, there's systems to take the water away from those fields down to our ponds to the south, and so that is built in, but it's, and then what you may be getting at, Steve, is, and then there's also, obviously, if becomes a natural infield, there is a specific infield mix, that goes on top of on the top layers of the infield, right? That's, usually has a specific,
My biggest concern is, when you move that amount of earth and you put it in a spot, you come back 10 years from now, that earth is not gonna be the same level. And, if you put a turf over the top of this, if you all of a sudden next spring, there's a low spot, if it's dirt, you can resod it, you put some dirt in there. But if you put the turf on there, I think it's gonna be a huge fix. If it starts to sink somewhere in the infield, I'd be a little leery for that reason. I mean, I would love to see the turf in there, just so it would be easier to have games and, you could have games more often. You wouldn't have to deal with the weather as much, but putting turf in now, for that reason, I wouldn't be in favor of it. 5 years from now, everything should be pretty well settled. And then if you were to put it in there, I don't think you'd have much problems. But I'm a little leery what's gonna happen with that over time.
Yeah, we have conversations with all that. We have it obviously with the football track. We have it even with tennis right now. And so, yeah, you're right. It becomes something you have to really be making sure you're engineered properly with your substrata to make sure that that doesn't move.
I'm sure there's some sort of warranty or agreement with that, correct? I mean, there's not like they just.
There's, yeah, you gotta have the proper base, and then the company that's
There'll be
putting in the
warranty agreement.
turf, yes.
How long are those typically?
Yeah.
How long are those typically, do you know?
Typically they're 10, and so,
So within 10 years, we would know if they're selling and we get it fixed. What's the, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, what's the sponsorship amount for a field?
lifetime, is 200 for baseball and softball.
For each field, each field.
And then there was $1 million if somebody wanted to do the whole complex, but, you know, that sounds a lot.
So for JV fields as well, what were JV fields? 200,000.
Yeah.
So potentially.
We haven't specifically priced those,
Oh, you didn't-
JV,
you
right?
didn't? Okay.
You're talking $1 million for the varsity boys of baseball.
We said $1
and
million for the
softball.
complex if you wanted it to be the, Montgomery, baseball, softball complex.
selling.
And then if Phil wants to have a $200,000 field on the Montgomery,
Oh, okay, got it.
There's a nice ring to it.
So in all, there could be, in theory, $800,000 worth of sponsorships on those fields.
Yeah.
So the 400 could be used for turf and 400 could be used for maintenance of the fields.
if
they were all fully
if you had
sponsored,
them all
correct?
sponsored.
Okay. And I think we take a risk of nobody wanting to sponsor if they're like, well, you're not gonna listen,
Right.
you're not gonna take my feedback, and we wanna do these tournaments, and we wanna have community outreach, and we wanna have people at our fields, and you're not. So, I mean, just plain devil's advocate, you're not gonna, we risk turning away donors and people who are interested in that.
True.
When in theory, if we look at that, there could be a way to do some of both,
And that's-
if you sponsor all 4 fields.
That's
If
what
we
I
get
think
all
I'm
4
kind of saying when, like, I feel like there's a piece we're missing, and so the partnering is we've got the people doing the turf, which equates to a lifetime. So how do we get that secondary partner to help with this, the field maintenance sponsorship?
And so do we say if we can do turf, if we have all 4 fields sponsored?
Right, yeah.
I don't know, I
But
mean,
how
just
are
throwing
we,
it out
so
there.
then how do we, the problem was how are you giving them a sponsorship? Well, because the turf people, the turf sponsors.
They would get us, they would sponsor, well, I guess I don't know, but they'd say they'd sponsor, they get,
They're getting a lifetime.
Mhm.
But then the field maintenance is not a lifetime.
Could be.
could be.
So you're gonna have then 6 lifetimes?
4.
So that, but then, yeah, how are you paying maintenance on the,
You would still only put turf on the 2 fields, not all 4.
right, but we need, so we're saying that the maintenance sponsorship for the turf field is coming from the JV sponsor?
Just because it's going right, it'd be, they get the naming rights, they're paying for the naming rights.
Yeah, there's not a dollar for dollar at that point, right? Because obviously, once you have, you have to put some new turf spreading on it annually, and, there are costs with maintaining a natural turf field, or, but a natural field. But I mean, it's not like a big one-time cost, right? And even lights, you might have to replace your light units at some point in time, but once the poles are in, they're usually there for a long period of time, 30, 40 years.
So I think then what you're getting at is we've got the 2 turf sponsors, so it's basically like we need to match that, is kind of what you're saying. We've got the 2, so we need 2 more to come in and we can get this done.
So all 4 fields, all 4 fields.
And then, right, so that's I guess, kind of in my mind what I'm trying to say and also what you're saying.
Yeah.
So we have half of it, so if we can get,
So I just want to be clear, we don't have commitments for those 2 yet. We're in discussion for those things. I don't want to give folks the sense that that's a done deal, And I would say we've done a lot of work to this point. Obviously, we've had a lot of success. I would say we haven't had a significant amount of interest in the baseball, softball fields to this point. And there's been a lot of effort invested in trying to get to this point. So certainly understand the feedback and the sentiments to this point. I'm not sure how likely we would be able to achieve all four getting sponsorships, but certainly if that's the direction of the board, we will work our tails off to try and make that happen. I think part of the reason why we're at this point, and to your point, Nicole, why it's such a struggle is that there's the timing of this. And frankly, we've been pushed on this for at least a couple months, if not longer, right, Ron? And we've held them off. And Jeremy's been a part of these conversations as well. Certainly everything that you all have shared are conversations that we've had internally as well. So it's not a surprise. It's really, we're at a point where we need to have some sense of whether or not this is a viable option to move forward or not. And what I'm hearing from the board at this point is, while there's interest in potentially providing turf on the varsity infields, we're not comfortable making that kind of investment, even with sponsorship, if we don't have long-term maintenance accounted for. Is that fair?
I might share a different perspective on this, because I do think, to Teresa's point, there's a route here where we don't get any of that sponsored, and then the district is responsible for that maintenance because we don't have the cash.
That's very true.
Right,
We're
so-
not sponsored, we're maintaining it either way.
There are no way
Right, that's
guaranteed
true.
that we're gonna get, I mean,
That's
y'all
true.
done a phenomenal job securing sponsorships to this point, but let's, we're down the field, and we don't have those sponsors yet. So I might, I'm in a different place. I hear what you're saying, Mike, on the current state of the district. I'm also thinking 15 years, that's a pretty significant kind of lifespan for something like this. And I guess my suggestion would be, if we've got this much energy from folks in our community, I would be willing to pursue this option, number one, and especially if we're willing to do, instead of a lifetime naming for this field, if we're going to do a 15-year, which is longer than any of the duration I believe we're doing for anything else, but not quite a lifetime, given the specific nature of the cost structure of the thing they'd be investing in. I'd be curious if the board would be more amenable to that type of structure.
I feel like that allows someone to feel more comfortable stepping in to do a maintenance sponsorship at that 15-year mark, because then it does become a point where they would get recognition for that.
But that wouldn't really pay for the turf though. You're saying,
I'm saying same amount,
oh,
rather than maybe
you're not
lifetime.
thinking- oh, I got you.
And I'm not sure exactly how,
That's interesting.
particular you've gotten in conversations about it being a lifetime. And if just feel like, kind of a bait and switch, I don't want to be sensitive to those conversations, but.
No, I mean, certainly we've had a fair amount of conversation, but I think the reality is the board needs to give us some direction on this, and there's the reality of that direction from the board, and we can certainly communicate that. And we'll obviously be sensitive about it, our approach, but,
Can I ask
please.
a question, I guess? Ron, I think you said the drainage under the infield would be different with turf than it would be with natural. How much more would it be dollars to?
It's tied in that 400,000, so, cause it's it's not like you can put in the turf infrastructure and then have a natural field, because basically what you're doing is you're setting curbs around that your turf then anchors to, and so it's a completely different system.
So with that, if you wanted to do this in 5-10 years, the cost is going to be significantly more because
Right.
you do excavation over there.
It would certainly be every bit of this, and you put in your other drainage system that you'll probably be tearing out as you put it in, basically. Or it could be more, because this is really the upcharge now, and so I'm sure we're getting a credit to help do that, so yes, it's likely going to be more down the road.
I think I was more in your camp, Jim, of wanting to, if we have a lot of energy from our community around this, trying to support that, but I guess the question I have, Ron, to follow that up then is, if it's a 10 or 15-year sponsorship, whatever it is, where is the money, where would the money come from now to make that happen? Because we're gonna get it over 5 or 10 or whatever the years are that is chosen, right? So where is it coming from then? Is it coming out of the owner contingency, or is there another pocket of money that it's coming from?
Yeah, that's becomes the conversation, is how narrow of a gap are they willing to fund it in, right? And then, if it's, whether it's, because we're still a couple of years away from using it, right? So we have time until the end of this project, so all those dollars get spent out, kind of, there's, that, within that framework of the project. So if they make that commitment over, 2-3 years, by the time the project's done, we're probably, halfway through that commitment already, right? Now, if they're saying that, they can only afford it, over the course of like a 5-year, yeah, then that becomes problematic, and we're basically fronting it as a district, knowing that the dollars are coming on the back end.
But it would come out of owner's contingency.
Potentially, or otherwise it would have to be funded out of Fund 10 or 21 until such time as the monies come in to replace it.
So in that way, then maybe, could you all give us a sense, have you all talked how much the potential donors want to stretch this out? And the reason why I'm asking the question is it seems like if they're willing to make a $200,000 commitment over 2 years, that's actually advantageous for us and not have to have the concern that Nikki is raising and free up additional owner contingency dollars for whatever else, or anything, right? And so,
Yeah, I honestly can't say how tight or wide of a commitment they'd want.
We haven't gotten into that level of detail yet. Typically, what we're hearing from most folks is they have a desire to spread that out over time for all the obvious reasons.
Teresa, where you at?
I think as you can do this, I think I agree with you in that, if we have people who are interested in investing, if they wanna listen and engage with them, and I think, if it's something we want to fund and it's coming out of owner contingency, it's not an additional cost to the project and they're willing to fund it, because I do think the baseline is we have no funding for it, right? So the baseline is there's no sponsors for any of the fields, and we're maintaining them anyway, right? We're paying for the maintenance either way, whether we have if we don't have sponsors for them, right? So I think if people who are interested, I think there's a way we can make it work. I'd like to engage and see if there's a way.
But the majority of the cost here likely would have to come out of the owner contingency funds. Because you're not getting all the funds up front, right? So.
I think that's an unknown, right? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know that right now.
Well, at the last meeting, we all of a sudden learned that there was $800,000 under budget, so we could get a better grade of furniture. Is that gonna happen again? Are we that far under budget? No, I mean, if it is, if we're on track for that, I feel a lot better about this whole thing.
I think, I'm trying to recall, Steve, right, at the end of that, I think there's a couple $100,000 left, but there's not and then obviously there are the two, both from an owner perspective and as part of the construction project, there are contingencies in there for things that may happen, right? And if bad things don't happen, those are our dollars, right? It's not like we hand that 800,000 over to C.G. Schmidt and say, great, enjoy a huge profit, right? Nope, that's our dollars. And so if we don't use those, that gives us the opportunity to consider things on the back end. But unfortunately, we're getting close to the back end, but we're not at the back end right now.
Every year of potential
Yes.
bad things happening.
Because this needs to be decided soon for them to plan, that's why we have to.
Yeah, we keep delaying them, but I would say certainly in the next 2 to 4 weeks, that's probably gonna be our push date.
We'll be all,
Maybe someone.
we already have altered their schedule, I think, what they had hoped to be doing on that field, and you don't wanna push it out to a time when they didn't intend to have crews working on that field, and that would mean we're incurring additional costs as
The
well.
ground people are getting to the point where they don't have a lot of groundwork left to do, so certainly wrapping up that drainage on those fields and getting off-site is probably, in their best interest, both for the usage of their crew as well as their equipment.
So maybe just to summarize kind of where we're at right now, my suggestion would be to continue the conversation. Because what we can always do is come back and we've had to take action on all of these. Right, so if we have 3 sponsors who are down to back this, you can bring it to the board, and as a board can decide at that time, if we wanna vote on it. I think the things that are gonna make this more compelling to the board that I'm hearing, we can have some kind of chance to solve for Steve's challenge, maybe that's the warranty thing that Teresa mentioned or something else. 2, if we can reduce the window in which the investment happens, such that we don't need to risk kind of going out of funds or completing our contingency. And if they're willing to shorten the duration of the investment, the sponsorship from a lifetime to something that would be more time-bound, give us the chance to go after additional dollars that we need for when we need to replace the turf. All of those are levers that will make it more compelling for the board to approve this, if and when you're able to secure the. Does anybody?
Sure that helps you, Joe, because what you're saying, or what I'm hearing you say, is you've got to make a decision with the contractor very soon.
Yeah, well, to be clear, Ron and I won't make a decision to approve this if the board hasn't given us a strong indication that this is what you all want. And I think what I would say is, what I'm hearing Jim say is, we don't need a firm decision right now, although without some indication, it became more challenging, I think is the reality, right?
And I think given the parameters set, we know if we can reach that bar in 2 weeks, then we will bring that back for conversation. If we aren't there, but we're partway there, then we might see if we can do it in 4 weeks, but I think there's a drop dead coming up.
Yep.
About that.
And I think the community partners that are considering this option deserve some clarity regarding the concerns of the board, and to be clear, these are very real and fair concerns. But I think to Jim and Teresa's point, this is an opportunity that we need to turn down without at least some additional exploration. And I think Ron and I are both comfortable having conversations to say, here's our reality, here's the feedback from the board, let's see if we can do some collaborative problem solving, provide an offer to the board that's appealing. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we gave it our best effort and we move forward. But we can't keep doing this dance for months to come. At some point, we need to make a decision.
The good thing about having this conversation is it gives, I think there's some people out there who've been reached out to by community folks who have an awareness, and obviously there's people who probably don't have an awareness. And this conversation at least allows so that if anybody can't say, geez, if I would have only known, right? And so, there's a chance there if somebody out there is passionate, about whether it just be the district in general or about these projects, now would be the time to let us know.
So I feel like we have more information. More information is always helpful. We'll have those conversations. We'll revisit this in a couple weeks and we'll have a better understanding as to whether or not we're gonna meet the needs of the board or not.
I really appreciate you bringing this to us for conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't fit in the 10 minutes allotted.
And we still have.
But to your point, Mike, I think it's really important that we have these conversations in public so that the community can hear, number one, that we're exploring a variety of opportunities, and number two, some of the real concerns associated with them. And so I think it was time well spent. Good. All right, now we're the dessert portion of the meal.
Oh, we're still in this.
Yeah, sorry, Jim.
Thanks for getting us queued up, Heather.
So, we're not gonna, we won't have to spend a lot of time on this. Please understand that we're gonna show you some visuals, and Heather's got them on the screen so you can see them there as well. These are early renderings of some discussions that we've had to this point. As Ron said earlier about, whether it be C.G. Schmidt, like, we have great people working, on our teams, and this is through Amplify that I think is doing a lot of this work. And basically what they've done is they've taken the community that we've shared from, or the feedback from the community, as well as some direction from administration and Ryan from Huffman Keel, based on his experience, to say, here's some things that we think would be really important for our school, for our community. And what we want to do tonight is just give you an early idea of what it's looking like. Talk a little bit about any feedback that you have initially, and then talk about opportunities to engage the community with this process going forward. Make sense? So let's jump into it. So Heather, if you would scroll, I think, a couple, see, next one, you don't need to see all the colors there, but one of the things that the community was very clear about as we entered into this project is Monroe is about history, Monroe is about legacy, and we want to honor that. And one of the things that we're really excited about is honoring the heritage of cheesemakers in our community. And so what you see here is this is the front of the building right by the main entrance, where the very large staircase that's going to be serving the building is a representation of one of our copper kettles that we have. Now, it's not that clean and shiny right now. We're going to get it shined up. But to represent cheese making as a craft and showing some of the history of that craft. You do see a little curio cabinet there. That's actually going to be moved to the left along the column there, and it'll be potentially more of a built-in cabinet. We'll have some cheese making artifacts in here. And then next to that will be some signage and pictures that will represent cheese making, which will also be complemented by a larger portion of the wall that you'll see in a little bit. So, I'll go through. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt and stop me. You'll see underneath the stairs, you see a Monroe M. We'll take a closer look at that on the slides as well. Basically, reference a large 3D Monroe logo that's visible both from inside and outside. Okay, Heather, let's go to the next. So what you're looking at here is if you were to enter the main entrance of the building, and you were to look up to the right, this is a large open area, and this is part of the branding work that we've been working on. How do we represent our school? What do we want people to feel when they first walk into the building? And what you see here is number one, we've got the Monroe logo, loud and proud. A couple of things to mention about that. You'll notice that the Monroe logo is large, and it's also, the plan is for it to be backlit. Costing associated with that right now, but we think that would be a really powerful image. People walk into the building. Also in the back, or the background to that, is kind of the vertical stripes, which would be represented possibly by more corrugated steel, kind of mirroring what's on the exterior of the building, so bringing that exterior inside and giving that look. I think the designers like the idea of giving it some dimension and some texture in that entrance area. And then you see the main bridge has some signage, which we'll take a closer look at as we continue on.
Yeah, so likely as they get these more developed, they'll come back probably with some selections for us. You know, they'll be pricing up these things, and so they may come back and say, maybe the budget allows for all of this, or maybe it only allows for part of it, and then we have to decide, is the three-dimensional backlit M more important with just a flat background versus do we like the corrugated look? And maybe then it's not a backlit M, right? And so all those various little options, they'll play out as they do it. So this is, again, very early concepts.
Jeremy, by the way, feel free to jump in here if we miss anything or you get super excited about something. You will see that the color scheme is largely informed by our school colors. We felt that was really important. Ron has a very strong opinion on jewel tones. And gave a harsh warning to the designers, and they honored that. And so we think it was beautiful. So Heather, if we can go to the next one. There you go. So there's a direct look at the bridge and the signage there. We had some conversation about what message do we want to send to people as they're entering the building, whether it be students, parents, community members, staff, visitors from other communities, and we felt we wanted it to be welcoming, wanted to represent that this is Monroe High School cheesemakers. So we felt good about that. Again, this is an early rendering. These are open to some changes, but we feel that welcoming message is a good way to greet people as they walk through the door.
With the red on the right and the left, potentially, they thought having this white was gonna be a nice contrast.
Let's do that as well, Ron. We've actually had 3, 4, 5 meetings like this.
Yeah.
and It's the designer working to tie all this together, right? So individually, you might look at it like, I don't know about that, but then when you see the whole thing together, that's where his as much as Joe and I try to tell him what we like, we're not designers.
Okay, Heather, let's take a look at the next one. So this is kind of a graphic, and I believe you'll get to see a larger version of this. So this is what would be on the top half of that wall. So think above the stairwell, above the copper kettle and some of the things that were represented
Heather, do you
there.
wanna go ahead 1 or 2 and just see? It might be easier to see if there's one with a stairwell.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So that frames it all out. You can see that, gives you that idea that we want to capture the history of Monroe. The specific pictures that are represented there, those are placeholders. I think, Jeremy and Ron have done a good job of talking about, we want to make sure that whatever we choose for those pictures and the sequence of the pictures, that we get some community input. We feel like this is going to be one of the most powerful parts of the building for the community when they come in and see this. Like, people are going to be touched. And so we feel good about this direction that we're moving in. Yes, we want to talk about cheese making, but we also want to honor the history of the city, history of the community. What's that? Agriculture. So if you go back to that last slide either, you can see one of the things that we're doing is using, what did they call it? The woodcut illustrations. You see in the background, it's kind of muted, but you see the courthouse is represented. You see there's a farm or a barn on there. Jeremy was very specific that there must be a barn quilt on that barn. That's my guy right there. That's why he's your high school principal. Details matter. And some other elements in there. And so, just to have that level of detail represented, I think is gonna really rally the community around this project. And
I
so,
think whether it be the board and or, a listening session yet again, where we can flesh out some of like, what are the 5 themes, right? I mean, right now they're just placeholders as to, what the themes could be and what images could be, but once we know what the themes are, then you can really flesh out what imagery goes with it.
okay. This is the opposite side of the bridge.
Now you're exiting the building.
Yep. So walking towards the main entrance as if you were to exit. God, it's a great day to be a cheesemaker. I love that messaging for our kids. Trying to be positive, optimistic. We're proud of who we are. And you can see that we're right on that side to break up some of the white that you see on the wall exiting. But we like the idea of using our bridge for messaging purposes. That's likely to be done through decals, which is a relatively efficient way to provide that kind of signage. So we feel pretty good on that, and that gives you the scale of it as well. So before we move on, any questions about what you've seen with the entrance to this point? I know we kind of see a lot of change here all the time, but all right, let's move on. So this is a closer look at that 3D underneath the stairs. Ron talked about the large backlit that was on the wall up to the right. I'm not sure what the price tag is associated with this.
This was built into the project. This was actually, I think, shared in the community presentations way back when. This was kind of when, there was a discussion about, you know, are we gonna have a large outside marquee presence on the exterior of the building? And I think this was, even when Michael was still involved, for those of you who've been part of this project for a long time, the original person who designed the building, this was kind of Michael's way of saying, if we put it inside and make it 3D, so you can see it from both sides, it can serve both as a viewing from the inside as well as from the outside.
I think I've been really impressed with the use of the space. I mean, you might take a look at the space under a staircase and say it's kind of dead space, it's wasted. And we put it to good use, and I think it's gonna be a really attractive feature in the building. Move on from there. So here you're getting an idea of what the glass treatment might look like. So there is some glass here. This is for our student services area. There's also some classrooms, office spaces that have a fair amount of glass. We wanted to break that up, and this was the most recent option they provided us, and I think we all were really impressed with it and like the look of it. And we like, again, the vertical lines that are going back to the entrance areas. So none of that's going, but I think we're getting closer to what we think might be in this building. Look at the next. Again, more of that. Use it for a conference room, what that might look like. Next one. So this is a representation of the arch. So Mike, I think earlier you asked about the arch. Yep, there'll be an arch on the exterior. Our plan is to also represent the arch in the M room as well. This would be a sculptural element. We actually, I don't know that we have paperwork signed on this one yet, but we have a sponsor that's very enthusiastic about sponsoring both the exterior arch and the interior arch. One thing that we talked about this at the meeting, the shape of this arch doesn't necessarily look like our arch. That's just kind of the screen to show you what it looks like. But the idea here is that this is taking the history of Monroe High School through the years. Ron is always going, well, let's talk about the sequence. What are we trying to capture here? So this is another area that we might be able to get some good feedback from the community. We talked a little bit about some of those folks that are kind of those formal historians of the community that love this stuff, and reaching out to them and getting them involved in some of the decision making that we're doing this the right way.
We'll certainly get a better picture of like the clock tower part of the middle school, but I mean, and even doing my own research, I wasn't aware of. And again, I'm more sequential, so I would either say either the arch has to go in the center to be the centerpiece, or you have to go left to right, with what's in the center being the first high school. So on the east side of the middle school, as you go up the side street, right behind us, by Turner Hall, is actually that middle picture. That was the high school from 1910. And then all of what we consider now, the old front of the high school, with the clock tower, that was all added in 1935. So it was added to that 1910 portion, and then that 1910 portion, the exterior kind of got modified when they changed the building in the late 90s. But those are really the three. There were schools before that, obviously, but those are the three, quote, big high school projects over the years, and with the current high school that we're constructing being the fourth.
An Olson resident historian right there.
I agree with you about the sequencing. I think that should be on the far left.
Yes.
I don't like
Yeah,
it in
it's
the
first,
middle.
right?
Yes, yeah.
It's the first one, it
Yep.
goes here.
Yep.
It's a timeline. You
In
gotta-
fairness to our designers, they were just trying to give us a visual.
It was just, yep.
Not getting into the details. Ron likes to make sure they understand.
We'll correct them.
I think importantly, one of the elements that we talked about, you'll see like the three lines coming down from the top of the arch. That they're hanging the pictures, they won't necessarily be serving that purpose, but that's a callback to our current architecture out at the high school that have some supports coming down.
If you zoom in on that right picture, yeah, you can see how the arch kind of supports that hang, the overhang.
So, to me, that attention to detail is really cool. and we talked a little bit, we have some little Easter eggs in the project where people can go around and fix some elements. Old school, I think, is really cool. So this is currently slated to be right next to the Mount House in the M room, so it'd be in a prominent space, and this element can be beautiful. And again, this is something that we have a sponsor lined up too.
Right between the Mouse House and the LMC, so yeah, it's pretty centralized, right across from the servery.
It's on the north side.
Next slide, Heather. Now you're just getting into a representation of what some of the classroom, the hallways or the classroom spaces would look like, so you can identify, are you in the science area, math, English, music, all those things. Let's just give you an idea of who we're gonna use some color. And again, that wood illustration to provide some subtle symbols that represent the work. Either we can continue to the next. And this is what a double classroom say would look like. The conversation today about, do we use words and words, and we like the idea of using some words as long as they're timeless. Classes represent our values, represent what we're trying to achieve. So be a lot of work around that as well. This gives you a visual, not only the wall treatment, but how the floor covering could also be built into that effect as well. Next, here's a room. It's kind of at the end here, setback. That'll give you an idea of how that can potentially be. Again, if you look closely, it's got the muted woodcut illustrations. One of the things that we were very sensitive to is past this, we've had a conversation about what does our mascot look like, and we've moved away from some ideas because we didn't feel it was gender neutral, and we wanted to represent both males and females. So we were sure to make sure that symbolism was reflected in the design as well. We feel really good about how that turned out here. Next one. This one, Jeremy had some questions about. I'm not sure if you like this one, so we're gonna work on this. And then this one gives you an idea of what a hallway might look like, again with color, some of the graphics, integrating floor coverings.
And again, I think somewhat of having professional eyes look at this, so you had kind of the rooms are kind of framed out, and then there was kind of hall tile that kind of broke up the tile, and so by having somebody who does this for a living, they go, doesn't it make sense that you would have something vertical on the wall then that also brings that, full circle, and so, and again, that's, we're still in the beginning stages of exploring that, but I think that was the concept behind it, and I think we thought it made a lot of sense. And again, it'll be just deciding what words match our vision and some of the other messaging that we're currently and intending to do for a number of years to come.
So again, we're a hallway space, different areas. Go to the next, Heather. This is Mouse House, so this will be the new and significantly improved version. A lot of glass, like the ROM in the front there, wrapping around the corner. Wanted to keep that pretty light because you can imagine inside there'll be some merchandise, much will be red and guided. But we feel like this is going to be a beautiful space as well for kids at the community. Working on to get a sponsorship deal for that right now. That wasn't in the bid, but we reached out to the business to see if it might be interesting.
And to Jeremy's credit, he's been very good about making sure we're consistent on our logoing, and so but because of the way we're using this space, this will be about the only area where you don't see the Monroe M with the Monroe written through it. We just thought that was a bit too busy for this space. But I think that's a good point Jeremy's pointed out. Let's try and, whether it be on our football field, in our field house, on our logos and mats, that we have, a consistent look.
And then finally, this has been an interesting conversation. This is really the large mat rug when you come into the building. There's a lot of people that believe that it's probably not the best idea to put your logo on that front that and have people coming and wiping their feet on the Monroe logo, whether it be superstition or just the idea of how you're treating Monroe. So what we're doing is trying to explore some more abstract designs that might be used in that entryway. It probably won't be this. We have some put together a few different options, but whether it be we don't like the look of people wiping their feet on the Monroe M, or the very real issue of we have a lot of block M's in the space, and there can be too much of a good thing, right? And so we gotta break that. So I think that's the last one. Is that correct? So that's it. Certainly open to a little bit of feedback. I know we spent more time on this agenda item than originally intended, but obviously there's a lot of really important work going on when we're talking about electrical, running conduit, HVAC, concrete work, foundational work. This is when it's really fun because you get to do the pretty stuff and see what it's going to look like. But we're thrilled with the progress we've made in a short amount of time with a really talented design team.
And as they're getting to the point where we're refining some of these ideas down, then Russ is kind of the artist who does all the design stuff, and then, Mark's the nuts and bolts business guy who gets to sit there and go, okay, what do these cost, and are they in our budget, and or starts to present some of those alternatives to us to make sure that we're hitting the number that we need.
Joe, I just have a comment. I can't imagine how much time has been put on this, because I think in the end it's really important. So, thanks to the team.
Looks really cool.
Wow. Lot of micro decisions, I'm guessing.
Jeremy doesn't look like it, but that man's got an eye for designs.
I will say I've snuck these meetings are usually done via virtual meeting. I've snuck Amy into the room the last couple to sit by me because I recognize there's 3 guys sitting here and it might be good to have a female opinion to, but you've been like, this is great. Yep, Jimmy Jackson's got great taste.
Take a lot of our cues from the designers.
Yes, Brianna's been great, Russ has been great. So
We were more of the, we have to honor the past, the history, the legacy, the agriculture, the cheese making, that was our stipulation, and Russ ran with it.
Different Russ, this is not Russ from PRA, this is not Russ from Amplify.
So that'd be why reaching out to the community and involving you all, what are we missing? Is there something else?
Yeah, so we're hoping that they can, we get this somewhat formulated to bring it back for some of those final decision-making processes. And it might be a great reason to have yet another listening session or whatever, so. Joe, was great to point that out, so.
Okay, thanks so much.
thanks, Heather.
Next up, budget update and operational referendum discussion.
Yes, this will be somewhat briefer tonight. I know Joe and I have been working on a timeline and, sketching out some of this that we're hoping to bring back potentially at the next meeting and start looking at, what are some of the hurdles over the course of the next year as we consider an operating referendum. I think certainly you as a board and as an admin team, we've been very close to this as we made some of the reductions and as we ran our last referendum and knowing that this conversation was gonna have to happen again. And so I think we sometimes assume that the community's really tuned in on this, and I think whoever, pointed out the last meeting that, we need to make sure we're keeping this front and center in people. So a little bit about tonight, what I'll talk about is what are some of the pieces of the puzzle that, we now know compared to when we first looked at our budget about a month ago. What are some of the unknowns that are still there? And then what are some of the big picture things as we start planning out this referendum, that we're gonna have to be tackling over the next, probably 6 months, 5 to 6 months as we decide if and for how much we're going to referendum for. And then obviously the the 3-4 months after that if we're getting ready to campaign and inform our community about a referendum. And so the attachments you have, I'm gonna start with the SAA summary. So this is a summary of the state budget that was approved, and you know, it was a mixed bag, and there's, you know, a lot of good. There's some things that we wish we were a little better, you know, but I think it's in general, it's a good starting point. It's a lot of it is where we thought it might be. Revenue limits, they did not increase the low revenue limit ceiling, which we're down right around it, so any increase to that usually would help us. That didn't happen in this biennial budget, but that's okay. It would have been a help to us, but it didn't occur. The $325 per pupil adjustment, that's the amount they set in the last biennium, and then the governor, through his veto bill, extended it potentially for the next 400 years. You know, and you know, created a lot of angst on that. But the reality is, 325 doesn't even quite reach what the current cost of inflation is. So it's a great number. I'm glad to have the number. Don't get me wrong. But you know, I think there's a narrative out there that, oh, this is a huge number that, you know, is out there forever. It doesn't even hit the inflation number. So it's not like this is a large or crazy number that's out there, but it does give us a number that comes pretty close to what inflation right now is. And so that's better than what we've had for a number of years, as that gap between what inflationary costs are rising and what funding have been increasing has been widening over the years. So it doesn't close any of that gap, but at least keeps it from expanding. One thing to be aware of is there was money put into the education system, and we'll talk about where that money is falling in the special education aids, which is great in the sense by having it there, it really does allow for some funding to come into schools. However, typically in the past budgets, there would have been money as the revenue limit increases that also gets put into the general aid formula to make sure that property taxes aren't going up much. The legislature this year focused on the tax reductions being on the income tax side of the equation. So there's still tax relief out there. However, when people see their property tax bills, you know, we have the increase in the revenue limit, which is nearly what CPI is, but there's no additional aid. So we're gonna get some additional revenue dollars. However, our aid is actually probably going to go down a little bit because there's gonna be districts who increase their spending a lot more than we did as we've been making reductions. And so we may see a couple $100,000 reduction in our general aid, but meanwhile, our revenue limit is growing. So that means our property tax bill will go up. However, people will be getting the relief over on their income tax. That doesn't mean that they're not gonna hold it against the school. But I mean, I think that's the big picture message that we need to make people understand, is that the state has levers that they can pull for tax relief. In many years, they've pulled those levers to help hold down property tax. In this biennial budget, they made that focus be on income tax. And so that's not saying, you know, school taxes are going crazy across the state and property taxes out of control. It's just saying the money got put into relief for income taxes instead of for property taxes. When we look at the categorical aid, the big increase, and not the big increase we would have liked, however, an increase nonetheless that we're happy to see is the increase in special ed aid. There was a lot of push out there, hoping that this number could go as much as 60%, or you know, some people even asking for more. It settled in at 42% in year one and 45%. And again, as I've cautioned you in the last couple meetings, that 42% is looking at the last budget and saying, if we just cast forward those dollars, what gets us to 42%? We all know that everybody's spending and cost is gonna go up. So by the time we get reimbursed, it's not gonna be 42%. It's probably gonna be closer to 40% maybe even a little less. And so when you look at how does that impact us as a district, you know, we were getting about 30% on special ed aid. If we say it's going to go to 40%, that means we're seeing, you know, a 25 percent increase in there. And so when you talk about a, you know, $2 million aid formula, we're, you know, probably hopefully 500,000 more. You know, if I guess it's almost a third more, but again, I don't think we're gonna be able to capture all of that, because again, we're still having some reductions in our special ed too. So you're talking $500,000 to $600,000 of additional special ed aid at the best. Likely it'll come in a little less than that. So that's new dollars that will help us when we look at our deficit that we have. Again, doesn't address our full deficit, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but certainly helps against that number. High-cost special ed aid, so if you have students with very high needs and you have individualized costs for them, that reimbursement rate is going up to 50% in year one and 90% in year two. You know, I think it's great for those situations when you have those high-cost students, because, you know, every district has, not every district, but many districts have a small handful of those students, and they can eat up a very large portion of the budget. You know, I think the cautionary tale in there again is it's a set dollar. And so, you know, I think more districts either may claim things, or there may be more expenditures that are individualized towards students. And so the number of expenses may go up faster than that allocation is going up. So whether we'll actually hit that 50 and 90% by the time those biennial budgets years come around, we'll have to see. But it's great that the intent is there to raise those dollars. Some of the mental health funding did get continued, so we were afraid that those, and it's not big dollars, but we were afraid some of those costs that were in there associated with some of those grant allocations for mental health supports were gonna go away. They did make it in the budget, so at least those revenues can remain. And then sparsity and transportation aid don't affect us a lot. Transportation aid, in the sense of they didn't increase the pool of funds. However, they increased the pool for students who are transported 12 or more miles. In our case, we don't have many kids who are transported 12 or more miles. So most of those dollars are going to districts like where I came from, Northland Pines, where they're covering, you know, 430 square miles, and not like Monroe where we're covering, you know, 30. So.
Can you explain sparsity aid, please?
Sparsity aid is you're eligible for if you have enough size and or it's basically density of students. And so with our size of a district, we're already over the threshold of even being eligible for sparsity aid. Now, if we were smaller, we might be eligible for it, but then it comes down to how big of an area are you covering versus, you know, because I'll use Little Chute always as an example. I just mentioned Northland Pines where I used to work. Northland Pines covered 430 square miles, and when I was there, had 1,600 pupils. Little Chute covered 5 square miles and had 1,600 pupils. Big difference in your costs and transportation costs and things of that nature. And so that's how sparsity aid comes into play. We're not eligible for it. That's mainly small districts and or districts covering large rural areas. And so those are the big plays, the big levers of what's changing. We talked about the revenue limit, we talked about the equalization aid and special ed aid. On the, and I think it's down there, did they mention it? On the expenditure side, it's way down at the bottom. If you scroll down, the area that comes into play is they did increase the cost of reimbursement for open enrollment. And so when you're a net negative district like us, meaning our out is more than our ins, which for most districts that is the case, because so many students are going to some of the virtual schools across the state that most people have a deficit. It's just, you know, some are larger than others. That cost is going up about 12.7%. And so, you know, if we would maintain we run about a $900,000 deficit between our our ins and our outs. You know, if that maintains and that cost goes up then, you know, it's an additional $114,000 of expense, that we need to be thinking about. So, that's one of the cost sides of the budget that we have to be looking at and keeping our eyes on. As we look at, I'm gonna open next, just our, budget that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. I guess
Quick, I'm gonna ask.
Yep.
In looking at this, am I correct in that our open enrollment out to public schools is less than what we have to pay out to private schools per pupil?
That is true as well, yes. Yeah, I didn't get into those details, but yes, yeah. Yep. I'll briefly touch on federal before I get into the budget. Federal dollars, at one point in time, there was, concern that they were gonna reduce Title I. They did not reduce Title I funding. It's one of the few federal dollars that was untouched. However, what they have done right now is, for now, they put a quote freeze on the other title programs that are out there. And that quote freeze is as they have a chance to further evaluate those programs, and then they'll decide how they may or may not fund them. So what it really puts in jeopardy for us is our Title II funding, which is where we look at, you know, some of our professional development for our staffing. It puts into jeopardy some of our ELL funding, some of our tech funding, and so some of those auxiliary funds that come in and to support education. And in the case of Monroe School District, that's about $94,000. That's right now, quote, frozen. We don't know if that means it's going away or if we'll find out that they're gonna continue to fund it. It's a bit of an unknown right now.
So Carl Perkins, Title II and Title III?
Is Carl Perkins is okay,
CT.
right? But it's that little tech one.
Right.
Carl Perkins right now, but you have access.
Okay. So there's 2 and 3 right now.
Yeah, it is what is it,
Title I,
4?
Title I-C, Title II-A, Title III, Title IV-A, IV-B.
Because the 1C doesn't apply to us, so, yep. And so then if we open up our, I should have said it's PDF, I apologize. It's, I gotta open my Excel, I'm sorry. You have this from like the last meeting or two, I think a PDF version. As we look at our budget, looking at 24-25 as we're finalizing, we've done some of our month-end closeouts, but we haven't done our year-end closeouts yet, and so none of the numbers are finalized yet. Right now, it's looking on the good side, like expenditures. Our Fund 27 transfer is probably gonna be pretty close to what's budgeted. The rest of our Fund 10 expenditures are looking like they'll be about 400,000 under budget, which is good. The revenues, though, are also looking like they'll be a couple $100,000 under budget as well, so we're probably not gonna be able to get that full kick of 400,000, but we should get $250,000 or so better than where we were budgeted. And so if you look toward the top, you know, we were looking at 7.7 and projected ending in 24-25 of 5.1. That's probably gonna come out closer to maybe 5.4 or a little less. So not great. We're using a lot of fund balance, but a little better than where we're budgeted. Moving forward to the next year, you can see, and this is what's gonna be the precursor for all of our talk over the next few months about potential referendum. We were looking at about a $2.5 million deficit. Now, we made up some ground on the special ed funding, which should help offset some of our special ed transfer. We lost a little ground on the open enrollment costs, some of that which you know, I'd factored in a little as I was building this budget, so it'll mitigate that a little bit. But we're still probably looking at, you know, I'm hoping that we'll get down closer to around a 2, which is still a very big number for us, $1 million deficit, and if we can get it lower than that, that'll be great. But as you move forward, as we look to casting this forward into the next year or two, once we see what our September enrollment looks like and are able to start casting ahead better as to what that means to our revenue limit going forward, you know, we might have to be, that's when we're gonna really be able to hone in as to what the number is. It'll also be the time at which then the administration can look and say, okay, what programs are we looking at if this doesn't pass? And so, we can work on starting to finalize those numbers, and we'll be doing that throughout the summer and as we get closer to knowing what some of those enrollment numbers are. You know, because that's something that we're going to have in place fairly early in the fall, so that as we get toward December, we have a good idea of what that referendum may be looking like if we are moving forward with one. And so, that's a little foreshadowing for, as we develop that timeline, that we'll be bringing back and talking about in a couple of weeks. But that was kind of the highlights I wanted to let you know tonight. You know, there's, you know, it's only been a month, but already, you know, we know a little more and the numbers get a little refined, and that will keep working. The good news is we're in the first year of a biennium, so as we're projecting forward to next year, we at least know the game we're playing with, right? So as we're looking forward to 26, 27, we know what our revenue limit increase is gonna be. We know there won't be any general aid. We know what the increase in special ed will be for that year. And again, you know, is it everything special or education wanted? No. Does it catch us up and make up for some of the losses and deficit we've had? Nope. However, it's better than a lot of budgets have been in biennial budgets, and it's at least trying to keep pace, so that it's not, that deficit isn't growing even larger, which has been the case the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Am I kind of reading this right as I look at it and think about the biannual budget or it looks like if you extend our fund balance out, all things remaining equal, to the end of this budget cycle, will be basically zero fund balance when the state goes into the next budget cycle.
If you had to run all the way to the end, and that's why we've said you know, beyond this coming year, you just couldn't do that, right? And so, if you look at, you know, at the end of 25, 26, right there, it was looking like it would be about 2.7. I just said we'll probably be $250,000 better than that, so that's 3. With some of the ground we'll make on the special ed aid, that's gonna gain you a little bit, right? So let's say it's between 3 and 3.5 somewhere. Yeah, if you carried it forward another year, then you're taking another 2.5, and then you're down to probably $1 million, right? And so that's unsustainable at that point in time. And so that's why I think in the conversations the board had with the last round of reductions we did, and as we talked about the last referendum after it did not pass, the conversation was, we're gonna have to, because we've never liked to identify all those programs and potential cuts up front, because we don't wanna, quote, hold things hostage. However, we're at the point now where we either need to pass the referendum and get the funding, or we need to implement those cuts. And so I think it's fair that people need to know what that will look like for our district. And so, because you're right, if the referendum doesn't pass, or we don't run a referendum, and we don't make cuts, we're soon not gonna have a fund balance, and then you're playing without a net. I mean, even getting down to 3 million, there isn't much of a net there. And, you know, prior to me being here, and that's 20 years ago, it's a long time ago, when things cost a lot less and our budget was a lot smaller, this district went from having a $2 to $2.5 million fund balance to being 500,000 in the hole in 2 years. You should never be in the hole. And so that's the importance of fund balance, but it's also why you have to have an idea of where this budget is going, and being able to address it proactively. And so, yeah, you're right.
And not that it,
Moving forward, we're in the position where we have to ask the community to step up and fund the district, which isn't necessarily gonna be a fun ask, or we have to make some very significant cuts, which is not going to be a fun process, so.
Yeah, we've cut $1 million each of the last couple budget years already, and so, and we've tried, and even with that, we've lost some programming, right? Sherman went away, and Abe Lincoln's down to a one-section school, and, you know, so there's been changes that have been part of that, but yeah, if we have to find another 2 million on top of that, it's gonna make our district look very different and operate very different than it has.
As I look at it, 2 million's not enough.
Right. I think you're probably right, because that number is hopefully not going to grow significantly, but it likely will grow a little bit, given the amount of what funding they've put in place at the state for at least the first year of that biennium. We don't know what the year after that's gonna be. 325 is baked into the cake a little now. But I think the other thing is for some of those people who've asked about, you know, what, are we bringing anything back? Are we, you know, some of those cuts that we've made, that's not factoring any of that in place. And there's been a couple of things, you know, one that's out there is, you know, we've had an opening for a custodial position at the high school that we've been able to not fill, right? And so that saves our budget right now. We know that when we open the new high school, that's a position that we need to refill. Well, that comes at a cost. And so, yeah, there's things like that that have to be factored in as well.
With all that being said, though, you just said that it looks like we are gonna come in under budget this year. So kudos to you and everybody else on the team who's making sure that we're not overspending. And kudos to the board for all the cuts we made
Right.
to make that happen, but it still doesn't help where we are.
Yeah, and I think the other factor that comes into that is, as we make more and more of these reductions and refine our budget more and more, any of those soft places to land have long since been cut out of the budget, and so gone are the days when, you know, you could say, oh, if we come in 3% under, we might save 900,000. Well, unfortunately, as I build my budget now, I have to kind of bank on a little bit of that to make this work, and so those days are gone. And so we're always gonna make sure that we are responsible and try and come in under budget, but the days of coming in, you know, $1 million under budget are probably not realistic.
And Terry, if I can add to your list of kudos, and I know you would agree with this, kudos to the staff for taking on
Absolutely.
extra work in order to keep the buildings running, because they are absolutely doing more now with less resources. And so we're fortunate to have so many great people that keep it rolling. But to Ron's point, that's only going to become more challenging as we consider additional reductions.
What I had for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
One clarifying question, so to track down the amount of the burden that's being shifted to local property taxpayers. How do I find this in the budget sheet?
It's not, I guess what you don't look at it as necessarily as a burden per se. There's a document that's out there that projects based upon what was passed, what it means for everybody's aid. And in our case, it's, you know, we're looking to be, likely will be a couple $100,000 less. So in an easy scheme of it, you say, okay, that's the burden that gets, you know, is being transferred over. I think what you have to look at, and unfortunately there's not an easy answer for you, Jim, is that $325. Now, unfortunately, our enrollment's dropping, so, you know, we have to factor that in. But if we set that aside, that $325 per pupil would potentially be new revenue if we weren't having declining enrollment. And there's no offsetting increases to state aid this year, which typically there would be. So for every student, we're getting an additional $325 to help cover the inflationary cost increases we have. And there's no dollars there. So really, what that quote burden is to the community on the property tax side is that $325 per pupil. We're increasing on the revenue limit side. And again, what they're seeing is they've allocated those dollars instead of putting property tax relief in the sense of school aid to reduce the property tax levy. It's just going into people's income tax and reduction there. A reduction for some people based upon age that they get to offset, not count some of the first revenues they have, and a reduction across some of the ranges, I guess you would say, of the income tax.
And that's not unique to Monroe, right? That's every
Statewide.
single property taxpayer in the state of Wisconsin.
Absolutely, yeah. So this will be a theme that we'll see across the state, and it'll be a conversation that, there will be people who, as with anything, there's winners and losers. There's gonna be people who no one's ever happy about the property tax bill, right? But, there'll be people who that hurts more than what they save on the income tax side. There's gonna be people who save more on the income tax side. They're still not gonna be happy though that their property tax bill is more, right? And so, but it's just where the state's priorities are, and school districts don't have any control over that.
Just to clarify, then this fall, when they get their property tax bills, they will go up, and they're going to blame the school.
Most likely, yes.
Great.
Yeah, and that's why we just make sure that we message, what we can control and what some of the reasoning was. Because again, I'm glad to see there's an increase in the revenue limit. I think, the reduction as it was built with no increase in aid was somewhat deliberate to make it harder for people to pass referendums. But I also understand there's probably people out there and constituents out there who think that a reduction in the income tax is a better way to fund. And so, I have to respect that as well.
So Ron, how do you then determine and bring forward, to the board, what do we need? What do we need to ask the community for that sustains us for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, right? Because obviously we, had we gotten the $1.5 million referendum passed this last year, we would still be talking about this, right?
Yeah,
Because
so-
we'd still be in a hole.
It gets difficult long-term, not knowing what, biennial budgets of the future will bring. Again, that's where the $325 at least brings some certainty into play. But we will project out again what, 3-4 years looks like, and most likely it'll grow. Hopefully it won't grow quite as significantly as it had in the past. Now, they could go back and start cutting special ed aid again, and then suddenly we're gonna widen again, right? And so, we'll build out what that projection is. Some of that's gonna be based upon, what our, enrollment numbers look like come this fall. And then, enrollment projections are, difficult, right? We know our smaller classes are smaller. Every now and then you'll get some boost, and to be honest, some of our ELL population, comes with some added cost to us, but it also comes with students and revenues attached to it, right? And I don't know what some of the, what the future of those numbers are gonna hold based upon some of the federal policies. And so it's unfortunately, there's no great crystal ball. You get a little fuzzy and you do the best you can, and we'll come up with a projection as to what those next 3 to 5 years looks like, and then set the number accordingly, and then that's what we have to shoot for or adapt off of.
So you don't have a crystal ball.
No, actually, I was thinking of that going backwards, years ago when, the number was much smaller, I don't know if any district did it. It would have been nice to have at one point in time said it was, just, cause, you look at us right now, we're about a $2 billion district, or we'll be over a $2 billion district. And so, 2 million is roughly, gonna be $1. And, going back a number of years ago when we were at about that same cost, it would have been nice at some point in time to say, for just $1 a year, right, as far as mill rate, well, then that would have always grown. And you'd be in a better shape, because, again, you say 2 million now, that's $1. That's not gonna be enough 4 or 5 years from now, and the reality is that's probably only gonna be 70 cents of levy rate, 4 or 5 years down the road.
I hate to even suggest this or ask this, because if I were in your position, it would drive me nuts, but should the board be looking to try to support like an efficiency audit or something to get a third party to turn over every stone, to look for every penny and where we might be able to save, with a different perspective?
I think you could, if you would, like to do that. I would say, there's two sides of that, right? There's projecting, and the last time I actually independently projected my budget, and met with the Baird folks, and they projected based upon the numbers I give them, because they got to feed it off of what our budget is and what our assumptions are. They came out exactly the same. Now, does the Baird model have some better visuals? Yep. And might that be beneficial to us? Maybe. Comes at a cost, right? As far as people who are going to find efficiencies, anybody can find efficiencies. The question becomes that what's your priority?
Like I said, I don't even like suggesting it, because it's usually a culture killer. It
Oh,
upsets
and-
people.
Right, I mean, you can say, get rid of X, Y, and Z programs, and you're gonna save money. Now, we as a board can decide to do that ourselves, but if that's not our priority, that's not truly an efficiency. So I'm not, if the board would choose to go down that road, I'm not opposed. I will say, I've been doing this a long time. I don't think anybody will know my budget better than me. And so, what it will really come down to is identifying cuts and the board's appetite for implementing them. I can do that too. I can give you a list that'll gut $8 million out of this district. Well, pretty. Our district won't look like much. But.
Well, and because like you already said, we keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and you come to a point where there's nothing left to cut without gutting the system.
Right, yeah, and then who's going to work for you,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, you could, I'm gonna go to the extreme. You could say, we're not gonna offer health insurance. Go out on the exchange, get your own health insurance. Who's gonna work for us? We had a conversation earlier tonight. One applicant for a special ed position. What do you think that pool starts looking like, even just for an elementary ed teacher? Suddenly you don't have a pool. And so at some level, we are in a competitive nature, and Joe's very good at always pointing this out, of we don't have a captive audience, right? If we're not offering a good education program, and if we're not offering programming that our parents or parents that are out there are looking for, they can go anywhere else. And oh, by the way, our taxpayer dollars go with those kids. And then all we're doing is paying to educate a kid somewhere else. So I would hope that our community would understand that if we're gonna be paying to educate students, let's educate them in Monroe.
Maybe we could do, thank you, Ron, for bringing us into the latest. Could we just do next steps on, what I'm hearing, we've got a lot to think about as a board. The admin team is gonna take a look and start to identify what, we're probably talking $2.5, $3 million. What are the range of scenarios that would get us to that number? And then maybe you could help us understand when we could revisit that.
Yeah, I think next steps are, I think, next meeting, should be the 28th. We come prepared with a bit of a timeline. What are some steps that need to be taken in order to help the board understand what we have to do? I think the other part of this that we've talked about a little bit is how the communications plan is feed into this. I think there's the financial side of it, but there's also making sure that we're telling our story to the community so they have all the information they need to make an informed decision down the road. There's some legal components and timelines that are part of this. But I think what I've heard from many board members is let's get the information developed, prepared, communicated sooner rather than later, so that people truly understand the nature of what we're dealing with. We can start to provide what that might look like and get some feedback from the board, starting with the next meeting. And I think from the admin team side, we're eager to do that work. Certainly, there's a side of this that doesn't feel good in terms of making people feel uncomfortable knowing that this is hanging out there. But the reality is people already have a sense that this is a big year. And I think that's true of our staff. I think it's also true of our community. And I do believe that if we do our jobs and we communicate the information, community will make the decision that they feel is best based on the information. We're fully invested in doing a whole lot of work to make sure that this process is done the right way. And that'll start.
Okay. So is any cries of outrage on some of the informational items?
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Really appreciate it. Work.
Okay. Anything from administration?
The only thing I was gonna share, shared it in the board update recently, is that Senator Howard Halpern is gonna be visiting the district on Thursday morning. We're trying to stay connected along the lines of this conversation. Obviously, we want to understand the impact of the state budget on our needs and certainly the local taxpayers. So we'll have that conversation, and Howard been great at time for us. Certainly we had to visit up to office in Madison recently, so we'll continue to stay connected and hopefully there'll be a benefit to that dialogue. So if there are any board members that are interested in being part of that, you can certainly contact me. Obviously, we want to make sure that we didn't have a quorum for that meeting, but if individuals are interested, let me know.
Yes, Joe. I've got nothing on the correspondence side. Committee reports. Start now with you, Nicole.
EIE is meeting July 22nd, finalizing plans for the pickleball tournament on August 16th. And Park and Rec will be coming out with some flyers and registration information very shortly.
Phil? Teresa? Mike F? Steve? Mike Davis? Nikki? Anything else for me? 10 items for future discussion? Maybe we could have a robust 20-30 minute conversation about this.
Jim, could you tell me, are the meetings on YouTube yet? I've had several people in the last couple of weeks ask me why they're not on YouTube.
It's under a different channel because the link got deleted, so it's the old link now.
So what do they need to do to?
Just Google like YouTube under School District of Monroe.
So we can put a post out on Facebook and.
I've had 2 or 3 people ask me in the last few weeks.
Yeah, for some reason the link that we had prior doesn't work no more.
Okay.
So it's the old channel that we had.
Is the new link on our agendas now,
I
Heather?
changed that.
So this time, if they went to our agenda, they should have found us, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah, we were having an issue with that. I know it was frustrating people, but hopefully we've got it squared away now.
And we have recorded all of those meetings.
They're all recorded and they're all uploaded, yes.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for raising that. Okay. Agenda items for future discussion. Hearing none. Liaison reports, MA and Mass represented tonight. 5 minutes for the press. Don't need to count it down. We'll go for a final motion to adjourn at 9:54. I had a motion from Mike F. and a second from Teresa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.
9:49. He's like 5 minutes fast.
My math book, starting about 3 months ago, just shows me random times.
Really?
I never know what time it is.
Oh, would you know, I cannot see
July.
somewhere else.